the citizens of Snowmass Village, the Snowmass Village Town Council, the Part-Time Residents Advisory Board, and the entire town staff hereby express their sincere gratitude and appreciation to Deb Cote for her contribution to promoting a strong community, enhancing the quality of life for our citizens. Introduced, read, and adopted by Town Council of Town of Snowmass Village on the 4th day of March 2019 upon a motion made by Mayor Butler, seconded by Council Member Circus, and upon a vote of 5 in favor and 0 opposed. So, be it said, come on up, Deb. Oh, I have to get the microphone. No, you got to say a few words.
Here you go.
I got one.
You're an attorney.
Oh my God, the secret's out. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to serve, and I hope to continue to find another position and another way to continue to serve this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And tomorrow night, you will be chairing the
Yes.
P-TRAB.
I will chair as the outgoing chair and bring in the new
That's
board
great.
and a lot of great speakers to keep us updated, including yourself.
Well, I don't know if that's great, but there's a lot of good presentations. So is everybody invited?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Everyone.
great. It's
Open
great.
to the public.
Yeah,
So it'll
come on down for it. It's at 3:30.
Yeah, right after bead toss, bring your beads.
That's right. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Deb.
Oh, I forgot about that. Tomorrow's Mardi Gras.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Next is, I don't see, is Reed here?
I didn't see Reed.
I lost a ski the other day up on Gowdy's. Still probably digging for it.
Good.
Good luck with that.
Well, now the next one is really hard. Was very difficult for me to accept when the Ginches moved out of Snowmass Village down to Carbondale. But I get the pleasure of seeing Wolf frequently. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's up here, and 40 years, 1988. Yep. Do you know how many years that is? If I can do the math, or is that 30? Way too many. So, needless to say, when you look at a pillar in our community, you don't have to look any further than the Ginch family. He has served as a builder, has served on numerous boards. He builds beautiful product, beautiful homes, and renovates, does some of the best renovation there is in the valley. So I've gotten to know both Wolf and Nancy through Sister Cities, and had the honor to spend time with his lovely wife Nancy in Garmisch and Chamonix a few years ago. So gotten to know the Ginches pretty darn well. So with that, whereas Wolf Ginch was appointed by the Town Council of Snowmass Village to serve as a member of the Board of Appeals and Examiners in January of 1988, and has been reappointed and serving terms through September of 2018. And whereas Wolf's guidance, intelligence, solutions, and hard work have been a tremendous asset to the Board of Appeals and Examiners. And whereas Wolf's insight into complex issues and his representation on the Board of Appeals and Examiners in Snowmass Village has been a tremendous asset for the Town Council, and whereas the Town Council appreciates Wolf's many years of dedication, leadership, and knowledge. And whereas Wolf's presence on the board will be missed, now therefore be it resolved by the Town Council of the Town of Snowmass Village, Colorado. The citizens of Snowmass Village, the Snowmass Village Town Council, the Board of Appeals and Examiners, and the entire town staff hereby express their sincere gratitude and appreciation to Wolf Ginch for his contribution to promoting a strong community and enhancing the quality of life for our citizens. Introduced, read, and adopted by the Town Council of the Town of Snowmass Village, Colorado on the 4th day of March 2019, upon a motion made by Mayor Butler, seconded by Council Member Circus, and a vote upon 5 in favor and 0 opposed. So with that, Wolf.
You have to
speech.
talk.
Well, 40 years was a long time, and I remember, like this afternoon, I talked with Julianne, and who was, and I said, well, Art Hoagland was our building
my
inspector.
gosh.
That goes back a while.
That's an old
And
one,
I
yeah.
knew some of the other board members from back then, and it has evolved, and it's great, but I'm still up here, still doing work. My son is doing work, and I'm just sort of overseeing, partially retired, to whatever extent that means.
Yeah.
That is, who knows? But I'm still a member of the design committee
Good.
probably for a long time, so I'm still involved,
That's great.
even living in Carbondale at RVR. Thank you.
And this is for you, for
Oh,
all
my
your
God.
many years.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate everything you've done.
Thanks.
Happy birthday. Okey-dokey. And did anybody see Reed? I got this here. No?
Thought I was early.
Okay, we're going to move on. The next item of business is the fire district. And we're going to talk about wildlife mitigation updates and recommendations. And who's going to do the presentation? You, John?
Yeah, Scott can join me up here if he wants.
Scott,
Don't
come
you think?
on.
It's been a little while since we were here. I thought,
Has it been about a year?
actually, I think it's almost a year and a half.
Oh, time passes when you're having fun, huh?
I did a little homework before I got here and tried to
Thank
figure
you.
out how long.
If any one of you, many of you were unable to join us for Scott Arthur's wonderful, wonderful celebration of retirement the other day. Beautiful, beautiful work, great job, and thank you both for doing that.
You're welcome. So the name has changed,
Yes,
but I want to assure you all, we're still your hometown fire department.
I still,
Station 45 will always be,
I always still call you a Snowmass.
Okay. we're fine with that. We really are. So we're here today. I'm going to give you a little brief history of where we've been. You've seen some of these pictures, but I'm going to give you the story behind the story. And then we do have a goal here today, and then I'm going to try to lead you into some sort of a common sense path that may be something that Snowmass Village would like to entertain. So I'm going to start all the way back in 2013, and although I could easily classify this project as a beautification project, what it did is it opened a big door for us. Up until this time, we were running into a brick wall that basically said all your PUDs, all your homeowners associations, all of these legal documents forbid the homeowner from stepping outside of his building envelope and doing wildfire mitigation. We found an opportunity here. This actually is all private property in the Pines. There is no real common areas. So we had some ownership buy-in on this project, but also we had to reach a little bit deeper, and we got the Division of Wildlife involved. We found out why they wrote some of these restrictive things into the PUD, and rightly so, but we changed the momentum on this one. We got the Division of Wildlife to actually say, this is good. What we were trying to accomplish here is good. And it also laid out some guidelines and some finite points where, no, you can't do mitigation during calving periods and things, but it really set the stage. That's kind of the story behind this 2013, and it really got the ball rolling. Up until this point, we were scratching and pawing our way through to get projects done, but this one opened up the door. So in fall, we moved into a more visual area in Snowmass Village. And the story behind this project was it's right next door to a professional landscaper who was very picky about his property, his lot, and we got his buy-in. He was out there, really won him over. This is one of the first areas that we did on Brush and Meadow, where people could drive by and see that the projects aren't clear cutting, that they have some sort of a mosaic pattern to them. And this is a clumping method. You could see how big this project is just by seeing a couple of the people's helmets right there. It was a huge project. When it was done, this is how it looked, and today I could show you pictures, but what we're really looking for here is everything we try to do is close to homes. We want to do mitigation that's going to have some effect or some positive effect for us if we need to protect homes. This looks like we're only protecting one home up there, but if you go over that ridge, there's another dozen right behind it. So this project was pretty much the same way, and it also kind of showcased that the Snowmass Homeowners Association was a part of this project. We brought Swift Crews in. This was the first for the community as well. I think they got used to that idea. So here's what we're trying to accomplish when we do this clumping and thinning, is trying to remove the ladder fuels. This is where wildfires get a hold of an area and just run the tops. If we can eliminate this ladder fuel progression, a lot of times it'll give us time. It'll give the firefighters a little time. It'll give the fire time to settle back down and not just run the tops of trees. So that's kind of why we do this. And these are just some illustrations that show you what laddering fuels are about. And you'll see along as we go how everything we do is pretty much in line with this kind of a theory. Of course, 2015 brought us Heinz Simon. That started, the story behind the story on that one is it started our coalition, the town of Snowmass Village, the Snowmass Homeowners Association, the fire district, and the Stemmons Foundation. We formed a little coalition, and we all kicked in some money, and we all had a common goal. All these areas, this is about 75 acres worth. This is Wood Road area, and I apologize, that's not in it. But all these common areas were mitigated in that project. We raised over $100,000 privately, and the Stemmons Foundation matched us. This project took us close to 2 years to complete. And as a matter of fact, we're still kind of in the area doing some other things. But once again, I use this picture a lot, but it kind of gets you into the idea that removing the dead trees really opened up the forest. And we also did some safety measures because we were finding trees along the roadside that we could just touch and they would fall over. If anybody knows that area, trees fall over all the time. Hopefully we did some good work up there. The fire department had another day, and I'll show you a picture of that. But these were just like cork in the middle of it, these dead trees. So I think it was a positive move to work in this area. So where you see this equipment is back in around 2003. This was the original site that we got the first wildfire mitigation committee. Bob Fritzstein was on that, Art Hoagland. We had a lot of the old timers on this project, and $5,000 we were going to spend. And Bill Burwell actually helped kick in a majority of that. At that time, the HOA directed me to go out and find funding. I did find a $50,000 grant through the Colorado State Forest Service. I had that in my back pocket. I came back to the homeowners meeting. They decided to not go through with it. It was a matching $50,000 grant. Needless to say, that put me on the back burner for grants for quite a few years because I had to give that or turn that money down. I don't know if it was a fear thing. I don't know if they just didn't want to come up with the matching 50, but at their initial direction, I went and got it. So that's when I think of this site.
Yep.
When I see us working here now again, I was really encouraged because we had come so far from that 2003 type of era all the way until now. Now, you see this soil's all kind of chewed up and all that. That's been reseeded, and that's been our history to go back in some of these areas where we have damaged turf, and we go back in with a good Colorado mixed seed. You know Mike Ungerfer from Western State?
I know him very well.
Right. And so we use him. I rely on him. He's got some great forestry background. I consider him our fire department forester. I like the information. So anyway, that's what kind of helped this project move along. In 2016, we did another story behind the story where this is the first time that you have a town of Snowmass Village dump truck, okay? You've got a SWIFT crew working. You've got fire department doing traffic control. It was one of the first projects that we actually got together in a neighborhood, a local neighborhood up on Oak Ridge Road area, and we did some work. So these are all steps in the positive direction. We had some neighborhood participation, and a matter of fact, at the time, I was really encouraged. I thought this might take off. But unfortunately, and I'll explain this a little more later in the presentation, it didn't. We do lack neighborhood participation. And there may be a bunch of reasons why, but right now I can't put my finger on it. So in 2017, all the showboating was gone. Now we could get into some of the back country on Ridge Road areas, some of the more common areas. So we weren't so concerned about showing our community anymore how well we can do this, or that it isn't clear cutting. We actually took it a step back and now started to get in between homes more, use some of those common areas to do more work. Some of this area is behind the North Ridge Road area and common area. Some of this area you could see looks like it's been tracked up, but to be honest with you, some of it looked like that before we got there. We did go back, we cleaned all this mess up, all this slash, all those dead trees, and we did reseed this area. I think if you would talk to any of the homeowners on Northridge behind some of those duplexes and condos, I think that they would have nothing but positive things to say about us. So this then took us back across the street into Melton 1 in Sinclair. And this is something that we typically don't do a lot of, but when you're dealing with scrub oak, that type of material, it tends to be easier to rebroadcast in. And we were able to get these chips into a fine enough state. I was up there in fall, and I think it's starting to blend in really nice, so it's growing through. But it took a lot of planning because we had to deal with all these homeowners in here. This is a strip of land that goes, it's a common area that goes between that Sinclair neighborhood of the Melton 1 area. This is Martingale Road right here. So we took that whole area and worked our way down with the Swift crews in between homes, and this is kind of what we ended up with. Once again, you notice how most of the trees, they're not touching the ground. We're removing that ladder fuel. The picnic area back here actually was usable again, and it looks pretty good from last fall as well. So once again, our history is to try to go and get areas that are close to housing or multiple housing. This took us into Snowmass Mountain Condo Seasons 4 and the trail system, and this brought in some more partners. So we didn't just use our money. We went to each of those HOA boards and said, kick us in, a couple grand, and we'll bring some crews through here, and we'll mitigate the areas close to the buildings. So while they were working on projects for us, like the trail system, the Swift crew was there, and we were actually able to work around those condos and thin in and move. You can see on the left, this is one of your trail systems right below Seasons 4 there. It's overgrown in that picture. There's a lot going on here. We went through there, and then on the right, you could see kind of the end result. Once again, we're trying to make it look like we were never there. But we did do a lot of work, and we did a lot of mitigation in that area, at least to clean it up. We're trying to reduce the amount of fuel that's there as well. So Faraway Road, this is where the fire department got out there with Michael. And all along the roadway going up Faraway Road, we took trees that were in that right-of-way These were the ones that we were worried about people walking their dogs or just cars driving by getting hit. And I think we removed quite a few. Plus, the firefighters got some good Sawyer class in there by a really good instructor, Michael. So 2018, I'm moving up the ladder here. This was another project where we ran into a little bit of problem with these two homeowners and their concern. And so we backed off of doing the project right behind that home, but we were able to do about 35 acres behind these homes. We got into this area a little, which actually is a water district area, but we removed, thinned, and clumped a lot of that work. These homeowners here are ecstatic. I've spoken to them recently, Mike Hundert and all those people are really happy. And it also, they kind of got into the mood where by kind of extending a little bit of property and or doing some mitigation into their own property. Also in that year, we tackled the Tom Blake Trail. This was a little bit more, we bit off a little more than we thought on this project here. And we're still kind of working through it. But you could see we had to tackle some big stuff along this trail. We didn't cut this tree down. You could see the root ball right here. That tree blew over. So while we were back there, we had the equipment. We thought it might be appropriate to kind of get rid of that. Once again, you can see a large stack of the fuels here, and we're trying to clean this up as nice as possible. So here's just a little bit of facts, okay? Is Sinclair Lane, we treated 35 acres, Faraway Road, 159. So we moved 595 tons of dead and declining wood in that area. Each ton is about a full cord of wood. Okay. So that's about 595 full cords of wood. The Pine subdivision, now this is one that Mike started late last year, but we've already got 139 tons of dead trees out of that area. And when you weren't looking, we snuck in a little bit of burning. Now, we did this very controlled. We had smoke reports. In other words, we didn't just go out there and light the fire. We actually worked with the state of Colorado and got smoke dispersal reports from the state, so we knew we could actually burn here that day and we weren't going to smoke somebody out. I don't even think the community knew, other than the police department, dispatch, fire department. All the people that were there knew in case of an emergency. But I think that we have more opportunity for that. We should use it. So the Pine subdivision, we have phase 2 coming up, which is going to be private. That won't be part of our money, but I still consider it as one of the mitigation projects going on. Jameson told us that she really would like this equestrian trail cleaned up, so we're going to put that on our list. We have more Town of Snowmass Village trail systems. We have some Snowmass homeowners projects. We're going to pick some spots, once again, near homes. I've also been talking with Brian Olson. Right behind Town Hall here, we have a large area of scrub oak. I think we'd like to go in there and kind of thin and clump that. Also because it has infrastructure involved. Our communication tower now, our 800 megahertz tower is right there. We want to protect these kind of areas, just like our watershed. I'm working with Kit on doing a wildfire report on the Ziegler Pond area. So these are all, hopefully these are all projects that are having some sort of a reason behind them. We're just not out in the backwoods chopping down some dead trees. We're trying to make this a project. We think there's at least 200 more tons, and I think there's even more out there. So here's a shot I took. Not one evergreen tree was taken out of this picture. On the left is a mitigated side. On the right is not. All we did is we went in here and cleaned up some of this area. Just is kind of showing you that all these trees that were now shaded out are going to have a chance to come back in here. As you can see, it's the same type of a dynamic over on this side. It just needs a little bit of work, a little bit of limbing. So I wanted to kind of show you, this is kind of what we're after. You know, if you don't want a wildfire in your community, you better mimic one. Because this is how Mother Nature cleans up areas so that the younger plants can come in. So I think we're on the right track. I'm not saying that you can guarantee you won't have a wildfire, but if we keep chipping away at all these fuels, if we do get one, hopefully we're not going to have one that's so intense that we can't control it. Okay, so let me go back one if I can here. Let's see. No. All right, so we had to do some rethinking on what wildland-urban interface really is. We tend to think of all these houses in amongst the trees and tucked in and, you know, trees going over. Wildland interface is really changing. I don't know if you want to blame it on climate change or if you want to just blame it on the way our wildfires are going. But this is wildland-urban interface now. We're losing whole communities in Colorado that don't really look like they should be burning, and how these areas burn is by ember showers. So it's not just a forest problem. This is a construction problem too. This is a house problem as well. We think we have an answer. So I'm bringing this up. That's just a map of the Lake Christine fire towards the end of the fire. Of course, we know it was about 500 acres. But this area here was able to be backburned because mitigation took place there a few years earlier. In other words, the way they protected this trailer park, they didn't line a bunch of firefighters, although there were a lot there, but they fought this fire with fire. And they backburned this area. The fire was coming. Most certain they thought they were going to lose this trailer park. But they knew they had mitigated this, so there was a chance here that the fuels weren't so excessive that they could backburn it, and that's how this miracle happened. So, wildfire construction codes, that's why we're here today. Maybe you remember this document that in April that Valerie brought to you and you signed, and it was actually, they do one of these plans every 5 years about, and it helps you with your FEMA funding if you ever do get in a problem. Every emergency agency in this whole area is a part of that. And in this document, of course, I'm showing you there's troubling trends on the right-hand side, but in this document, there's a section that basically says that Pickens County and the town of Snowmass, along with the Snowmass Wildcat Fire Protection District, we're gonna take a look at developing, implementing, and maintaining wildfire codes. That includes what we're continuing to do. So that's another reason why I'm here today. I want us to take a look at maybe beefing up our wildfire codes. I also know that in our community plan that we just completed, there were several items in here that also stated that you're going to continue to work with the fire district. You're also going to consider a temporary or a part-time forester. Well, I really commend the town for thinking along these lines. I think a forester could help this community, whether it's on a limited basis or full-time. I really do think that might be something for you to consider. But basically, this document kind of goes on to say that we're going to work as a team. So I feel right today that the fire authorities here in front of you, and we're going to ask you to consider at least looking at your wildfire codes. Here's your current code, and I gave you a copy of one of these, and I know it's thick and it might be a little cumbersome to read, but basically this is one of the best municipal codes that I've ever had. Okay, that part in here, that no development should be approved, that due to design size, including our building materials, could present unusual hazards beyond the firefighting capability of your fire department. That was golden. This code alone helped me with Base Village. I don't know if you remember when this started coming up forward, this thing not only was going to look like Copper Mountain, but it was going to be built like Copper Mountain. It was going to be 7-story tall wood structures. With this code, we were able to convince the developer that they needed to beef these structures up, and it took a lot. It really did. It took a lot for town council, and I commend them for doing it too. But now if you look over there, we have hardened structures. These buildings are steel. They look good. I don't think anybody complains about the architecture. So you can do hardened structures and still have them look good. So where this code then moves on to where it may not be applicable anymore is the fact that it goes on to say that if you want to build developments in areas of wildfire hazard, you're going to contact the Colorado State Forest Service. They're going to come out and do all this assessment for you. They're going to come back and recommend to you what you should do with the project. And then the town council can decide yay or nay. Well, I have a letter from the forester here. That's really not how it's going to work anymore. Back when this was written, Art Hoagland was part of it. This is late 80s here. Yeah, John Dennison was coming out here. We'd had State Forest Service. They were a little more free to kind of do those things. Will they come out and help us? Of course. But if you make the phone call to say, hey, come out here and do that, they're gonna turn around and say, call John, call Scott, call your local district. In other words, the education of local fire departments has grown and matched what some of the State Forest Service, we have their confidence in doing this. That's why I think maybe part of this code needs to then either revert back to the fire authority helping you, maybe an independent wildfire expert. I think that's a choice for you, but I do think that we could change because of that. When we talk about hardening of structures, we're almost there. We're talking about roofs, exterior walls, of course, landscaping that's close to the house, and decking materials. This is all we're talking about when we're talking about hardening of structures. This shake shingle here, that was our norm. That was the design committee. You either built that way or you didn't build it. So I think our community, and the reason I put a little gold star up here is, guess what? We've already done this one. In the late 90s, we came to town council. This is back when Boulder was changing their shake sheeter laws. I think they threw me out of the room on this one. This is way back in the late 90s. They were going to stick with shake shingles, no doubt. But anyway, there's a lot of different things we can do, and they look good, and I think our community is really working well. So another part of this hardening of structures is exterior siding. And I think if you look at a lot of our architecture, you're seeing that now in our community. A lot of these materials are already being thrown up. Here's some areas that we tend to lose in our code, but they're very vulnerable. And that's these areas that are unprotected with little jut outs on buildings. And the reason I'm showing you have to imagine that you're laying on the ground here and you're looking up that side of the wall. You could see all the exposed burning type materials. This is how we're losing structures in wildfires. It's all these areas that embers are finding their way into homes. We can fix this. This is easy. A structure fire in our neighborhood equals a wildfire. That's the way I have to keep looking at when we have to keep our structure fires down, because we might not have a wildfire that causes a wildfire. We might have a house that does it. So we need to really start beefing up our structures. Combustible decks, they're always a weak link, including these fences that join different buildings. So in other words, you have a house, then you have a little picket fence that joins your house to the garage. If you look at some of the Colorado Springs fires, you can watch those fires just following the fence lines. So I think that we can work. We don't have a lot of fences in Snowmass, but I just want to bring up the idea that decks. We need to really work on our decks. Now, just because you have a composite surface, that doesn't mean you can't still construct your deck out of wood materials. It's just that we're using bigger materials, 4x4, 4x6, things that don't readily ignite. The same thing when you look at our siding, on stucco siding, that doesn't mean you can't have nice wood window trim. In other words, we're just eliminating that broad mass of combustible materials that we use. Here's another little gold star. We've been on chimneys for quite a while, so I think that our town codes are there. Here's a typical house that we're starting to see. Our architects are really starting to build, I don't know if they thought of hardened homes because of it, or they're just on to this style right now. But Snowmass Village, a lot of the new homes are looking almost like this, okay? So if we were to go with a new construction code, you know that I had recommended that we potentially adopt something very similar to Pitkin County's code. And my reasoning is that the builders, realtors, everybody knows that code. It's been in existence since 2006, and everybody's working with it. We think it works. It might be something for us to consider. So the concerns, all right, so if I map this area, this is one reason I never really mapped Snowmass, is I was always concerned the insurance agencies are just going to go online, they're going to see John Melly's map, they're going to go, oh, hi, boom, insurance rates are up. Vail did that, a lot of backlash from the community. Different fire departments did this, and it just didn't work out. I never did it. I never mapped Snowmass. But guess what? The cat's out of the bag. They already know about it now. So I think mapping wouldn't be a bad thing. And I also think that if a property owner gets mapped into a high hazard, what kind of recourse does he have? What if I don't agree with that? So I think that these would be some concerns that I think we could address. Pros is the property owner is going to get the straight story. Right now, we're dealing with many, second, third homeowners. They're not here. I go to the meetings, we try to draw them in, we offer them free wildfire inspections. They don't bite. They're not biting. I send them letters. I mean, I just don't understand why we can't pull them in, but I think this is the problem, and maybe a wildfire hardening code would help. So, who's going to do the mapping? Well, Colorado State Forest Service has a mapping system, and you could see this is just an example, but you could see here how it's pixelated. And I can actually go to Snowmass, okay, and I can zoom in on our area, and if you can see this little square right here, this blue square, that's where we're sitting now in Town Hall. But even still, I can zoom in, but you can see all this is pixelated. So in other words, you really can't reliably map an area and say this area is high and walk away from it. You really owe the property owner individual wildfire assessments, because a guy that's in a high area now, we might be able to come and say, hey, guess what? Limb up this tree, take a little bit of firewood off of your deck, boom, now you're in a medium. So in other words, there's a lot of ways you can help property owners do this. Once again, our codes would focus not on any live tree, and it wouldn't be retroactive. So if you have that beautiful evergreen tree that's sitting right off your front porch, nobody's telling you to take it down. Nobody's going to imply that you take it down. We may have you limb it up 4 feet. We may have you use mulches or ask you to use mulches around that tree that aren't combustible or flammable. But I think we're gonna work with it. And once again, my idea would be a home comes into our system, either through a renovation, a large remodel, or a brand new home. I think that's what would kick in some of this. So if I was to map Snowmass, this is kind of where we would be at. Your southern exposure, your Sinclair Road, Oak Ridge Road area, it's very high. But once again, it's not a group thing. I could go into that area and pick out homes that are well mitigated. Okay, low, of course, your golf course areas are all low. And then on your other opposite side here, your Ridge Run area, that's medium to high. Once again, I could go into this area and find you low homes. I can also go in there and find you some extreme homes that need some work. Okay. So I'm basically through with that pitch. I want to reach out to you and say, are you interested? Do you want to explore a building code? Now, I've met with the building official. He's on board. I've met with a lot of different people. I've met with Julianne. I think I need to work with planning a little bit more to gain some more confidence from them. I think that they've seen individual homeowners in the name of wildfire mitigation go out and do things when it really was a view enhancer and not a wildfire enhancement. And I think that if we were to work together on some sort of a permit system that either came through the fire authority, that worked with planning on how we did these things, we might be able to eliminate that kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. And once again, we're after the dead stuff here. We're after hardening of homes a little bit. So with that, I leave you, and I'm open for some questions if you'd like.
Any questions for John?
John, I didn't read through your new codes,
Okay.
hardening codes. I did look at some of them, and the request that you're putting in front of us that Pickett County already has in place, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so,
since 2006.
so right now, the International Building Code 2015 is adopted by the town, correct?
Yes.
And the changes, are those changes in the 2015 International Code?
No.
Right. So you said you've talked to Mark, and is he interested in recommendations from council? Or is he looking at what Pickens County has done? Because we don't necessarily always follow what Pickens County does.
I buy that. I understand that completely. I think the conversations I've had with Mark, first of all, he's very understanding of hardening of the home and wildfire type codes. The reason that he and I both concur about the Pickens County, at least style of it, is that all the builders, developers, everybody's used to it. They know it. In other words, we're not coming out of left field with some brand new code that they have to learn, and they kind of already understand this one. I agree with you. I think it would need some tweaking because we are a special community. You may want to go harder in some areas or even lighter in some areas. But if I was to, I don't want to speak for Mark, but I speak with confidence that he's supportive of my being here today and asking that we work through and at least get something going in this area.
Well, I personally will. I'll find time to talk with Mark myself because I want to go over some things with him about these. But I like the direction you're going in.
Okay, thank you.
I really,
The other side of this, and I think the easiest way to get at this is that they're not
microphone.
huge changes.
Right.
You know, like John brought up in a couple of these things, we've already made some of them, but screens on vents, the chimneys, gutters, you know, it's just simple stuff.
Right.
And we know from empirical data that that's what's saving these houses. You know, we can mitigate brush. We're still going to have embers. So when that fire comes, how do we save these houses? Well, they have to stand on their own for the most part. You know, we proved that we could have 50 fire trucks here, but we had 1,000 homes. So which houses do we let go? You know, that's the point that John's trying to get to, is some of these houses be able to stand on their own.
So some of the houses up in where I live, up in the Ridge Run area, I mean, they go back to the original structures before we had codes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're living next door to one of those homes, or it's in your neighborhood, and I couldn't find it in, how do you deal with that within this code?
Well, first of all, you don't until
you
they
can't.
enter the system. I'm not one to kick down doors. I'm a firm believer in a king is castle, but once they enter the system, now you're asking the town for approvals to build your house bigger or modify it or change it. That's where we
That's
where
when
we
it
get
comes
it.
in.
And I'm not saying you lay it on thick. I'm saying you lay it on reasonably. That now we get rid of that big pile of firewood they cut, or that big wood they bucked up in 1976 that they were going to use as firewood. It's still there. You know as well as I do, there's piles of it up there. This is where I think we can approach that new person, get them to cut down some dead trees in their property, clean up the site, and move on. And I think this could be done without being really onerous. I really think this could be something that'll help our community decades down the road. It's going to take a few years, but I think it's a move in the right direction.
Well, I think many of us had our lessons learned with the Lake Christine fire. Next fire is right around the right around.
Trying not to lean on that. You notice there weren't a bunch of
but
devastating
quite frankly,
fires.
other than that one.
Well, this I kind of have here as a positive. You know, if you keep getting rid of all your big 1,000-hour fuels, that's the big stuff. If we keep picking away at that, when these guys come in and lay down their retardant, it's much more successful because they're not, in other words, I hope I never see one of these in Snowmass, but we've got to make things so that if we do get that fire, we can get it quick. We need to have that extra advantage. And hopefully some of these things are going to help.
I think many of us learned prevention is what we need to do. So I'm very much in favor of working to get this issue resolved, get it on the books. So I'm very supportive of working with planning and building department. And
Yeah, I think this complements
Yep.
our resiliency goal. It's just another piece of the resiliency puzzle, as you go forward. Yeah, I think absolutely that we need to pursue this and, update our code.
Are you guys all in favor?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and, just following kind of our theme as a council to be pragmatic about how we're approaching development. I think it makes a lot of sense. So thank you guys for the work that you've done so far, and look forward to it in the future as well.
You're welcome.
John, I guess one of the difficulties that I see is that, as you know, we don't have a lot of vacant land left to build on. And so the implementation would probably take, it would take a while, and it wouldn't make a big impact initially, I don't think. But I agree we should be doing it, not to throw water on it. But that was a thought that occurred to me.
I'm not sure the community drives the level of fire protection.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the community's ready to bite and go retroactive, but I do think very much so they would be receptive to this progressive style.
I guess I would hope that the mere fact that the town is going to review and update its code with wildfire mitigation as a focus would help people to at least walk out their door and look around their house. And even if they did it themselves,
I agree.
under the ideas of the code.
I agree, Bob. I wish I could tell you that people are beating my door down from second homeowners and even existing homeowners, that they're just beating my door down, and I have to do so many wildfire inspections that I need more money. Anyway, I can't tell you that. As a matter of fact, it's dwindled off. It's dying, and I don't mean to maybe blame myself. I go, where am I not reaching these people? I just think that it's not on their top of their list.
Not on the
And I
radar.
think we need to make it on their list. And if they know the town's making new people do it, maybe it's a little more push. Oh, I better get rid of that pile of wood or something like that. So
Well, it's gonna cost them money to get rid of that pile of wood.
I agree. And this maybe gives people time to budget too.
Yep.
You got to pick away at these things. Even my own home, my own wildfire mitigation, I can't do it all the time every year, but every spring, every fall, I pick at it.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at how much you accomplish in that time. So
Alyssa, any comments?
No, I mean, I think it's really important. I know when we moved houses a couple years ago, our insurance required us to change our roof to something other than the shingles. And in our old house, we had them, but they never said anything. So
Right.
I don't know how it necessarily works. I mean, obviously we had to get insurance for the new home, and that's why they did it. But I think it's really important to change those roofs, because I started looking at all the roofs in the neighborhood, and I'm like, there's a lot of them
Yeah.
that are still left that are
A lot of them.
that are wood.
Well, remember the 100 road fire down in Carbondale? We had 3 houses catch on fire, and every one of them had a shake shingle roof.
Yeah.
We didn't lose any houses, but all of them. And you bring up a great point, the insurance companies. I've got a friend that just went through this, hardened a home by our recommendations, and their insurance company, once they saw what the recommendations were, actually lowered their insurance
Whoa.
because the house had been retrofitted. So it's work and the empirical data. We learned in Colorado Springs that the cedar fences were burning all the houses down. So, that's just a simple thing to put a metal gate or make sure that cedar fence doesn't attach to a home. So we're gonna do that valley-wide.
Okay.
And I don't know, like, if it's possible, but, I mean, I feel like it's, people, at least I live in Horse Ranch, now that the houses are the age they are, the roofs are starting to have to get replaced, that maybe, it's as simple as sending messages to those homeowners saying, we know it looks like you're about to replace your roof or gonna need to in a few years, like, this is why you should consider this rather than this. Because unless your insurance company makes you, you may just put what's already on there.
Well, you can't do cedar shake in our town.
Well,
Yeah.
anymore, but
Yeah.
I'm saying like, there's still other things that are better than other things.
Sure.
Like, you know, and that was a big, I mean, they made us, we didn't have very many choices.
Some insurance companies are a little firmer than others. They're still writing a lot of policies up here, even on the old houses. So I can't rely on them. I thought it was our responsibility to bring this for you. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is some sort of positive aspect from you to say, you know, that it's okay if I start to meet up with planning and a little more with Mark and get a little more official with it.
So Clint, next steps, you'll work with staff.
Work with the district or the authority,
Yeah.
and we'll get a proposal put together and bring it back to you.
Great. Thank you, good to
Couldn't
see
ask
you.
for more.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.
Sean.
So much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. Do I have anyone in the public who would like to come forward and come to the mic? Tom, come on.
Hi, I'm Tom Hills, Creekside. I'm going to be revisiting a topic that we're going to call the pedestrian pathway that would link the top of the village to the town center. And this is actually something I guess was presented several years ago by Parks and Recreation, or what we call a poster. I believe Andy Warline actually had a proposal put together. But what I want to do today is just show you the existing trail that we have that comes down from the top of the village and curves around behind Creekside. So we have two bicycle rental companies up there, Gene Taylor and I think it's called Four Mountain. And I think they do a pretty darn good job of getting people down the hill. But on the other hand, at the same time, you know, when you look at it, they're going to take when they're saddling up their bicycles, and of course they're on unfamiliar bicycles and unfamiliar terrain, they don't really have a whole lot of time to get oriented before they take a right. They take a right down. I'm sorry, I don't know how to use one of these. Anyway, they'd have to take a right turn around the post over there, and then take a quick descent right down Carriage Way. And that is very steep. I would call that danger area 1. And then continuing down, they're going to have to make a left-hand turn into lot 4. It's another little danger zone. And you'll notice at this point they're actually going against what I would call against the grain of traffic parking coming out of those parking spots. And then take a left down a very steep descent. I mean, it's a thrill for them. You can hear them coming for half a mile. But that said, when they come down at the very end here, you know, they've got two 90-degree angles. And I actually talked to Duke Taylor up at Taylor Sports. This is the one concern that he has, is this descent right here. He says that really scares him when he sends these people off. And then they got pretty much a straight shot down to the next parking lot, which they dump out into, and then down another steep descent. I guess what I'm really saying here is that we've got some very dangerous situations here, and I think it could be totally improved upon if we could just consider going back and looking at that proposal that Andy Warline put together several years ago, which essentially would put a walkway on the right-hand side here. We call it the west side of Brush Creek Road. In which case you can easily see where you are. It's much more spatially integrative with the map system, where you'd be surprised how spatially challenged some of these people can be when they come down into that Creekside area down there. They don't know where they are. So if you were to use this and curve up, you already have a kind of a buffer there with a guardrail that would help with moving snow down without interfering in over here on the right-hand side where the pathway would be. And it would be in my view, it would be a multi-use pathway. You could have one lane for bicycles, one lane, or 2 lanes for pedestrians. And then, you know, you could still allow that, the existing creekside pathway on Lot 4 to be used for people who want to walk their dogs. But anyway, if you continue on up, and here you got the intersection. This is going to be a natural place for people to slow down anyway. It's also a place where you could curve around and go up to the top of the village to have a seamless route that goes all the way from the top of the village down to the town center. And in that process, you're going to intersect with 3 different bus stops. Now, to me, it would be more pleasing to be on the other side. It's visually pleasing, but Chris Condon, one of my neighbors at Creekside, pointed out that this would be totally a logical setup just to go down. Okay, so say we're coming down from the top of the village. We're going to curve around to the left here now and continue on all the way down to the town center. To me, that would be, it's just a pleasing, much more pleasing experience for people who are here trying to orient themselves. And it's more visually pleasing as well. So what I would like to see, if it's possible, to maybe have some kind of a study group that would involve somebody from the council, perhaps somebody from Poster, which would be naturally Andy Warline, and several of us up at Creekside, to maybe take a quick look at this, or not a quick look, but a detailed study, because I think now's the time to do it when we're looking at linking up town center with the top of Snowmass Village. And please, anybody stop me, because I'm trying to gallop through this in 5 minutes. So if there's any questions you have so far about what I've found out from my investigation on this whole thing. Brian Olson did point out the fact that he would be concerned about people walking along the road. Well, they are already. That's just, it's like the path of least resistance. And also snow removal. Well, I think the guardrail could help with that. But I just think it's time to look at something that's going to just be safer and just give our visitors just a more pleasant experience.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
Is there
Tom.
questions?
Practice, huh, Tom?
Bill, your thoughts? You're the big cyclist here.
Yeah, no, Tom, I really appreciate that. I think it's kind of overdue. It's one of my pet peeves when I see people walking on that road. And I'm hopeful that with the design of our new transportation center, a walkway can be integrated with that, so it's really easy to get from the mall over to Creekside, or where the bulk of our employee housing is. So I think it's important, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
That's good. So do we need another study group, or can we just integrate? Clint, go ahead.
I was just gonna suggest that we include it in the transportation center discussion, and when that comes back to us, and the community, we can see what it looks like, and if we need to, and maybe at that point, develop a, little task force or something.
Clint is a part of the transportation task force all the way to the top.
I think what Tom was talking about was, this idea was brought out in the
Poster plan?
no, well, it was in the community connectivity
Oh,
plan.
connectivity, okay.
It was that broader discussion of where our walkway is appropriate, where they're not appropriate. It kind of diverged into the urbanization discussion and all those kinds of issues. And so it didn't move forward. Poster hasn't really touched this. The Poster committee is largely in favor of most any trail connection, so it's easy to say that they're supportive of this. But the idea came out of that connectivity. And so if that's something the council is open to discussing again, we kind of put it on hold for, that was the direction we received. If it's something we're open to discussing again, we can certainly get that going.
Maybe we do pieces and parts, because this does make sense.
Sure. Well, I think we had a couple versions in the connectivity plan. I think it's worth bringing those back up to look at them.
Okay? Yes?
Yes, absolutely, and I think there's more than just this one spot that Tom brought to our attention that around town that we need to look into, okay? This is not the only spot that.
Well, there's a lot of them, but if we can even, this is where we see a lot of pedestrians. And Tom, the concept with bicycles going, the whole thing about the bikes. I mean, I've seen it and I've always wondered, how the heck are those guys even trained that are on the bikes?
I used to be a bike mechanic. I have
You want to come up here?
I I have all my tools at the ready. I can't tell you how many times there's been chains falling off and kids screaming and bicycle seats that need to be adjusted. And they usually figure that out when they finally get down to Creekside and they're leveled off. That's when they stop. And I'm just really concerned about that descent because one of these days somebody's gonna get hurt.
Mhm.
You know, and it's just very dangerous right there.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Clint, is the direction pretty clear? Yeah, okay. Hey, thank you very much for coming, Tom. With that said, do I have any other public comments? Seeing no hand go up in the air. I'm going to move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any item people need to bring out or check your attendance for future meetings?
On,
No.
I had one on 2-2. Line 71, the amount is $1 million. It should be 100,000. Line 71.
52.
Okay, hold on here. Oh, on draft agendas, we did receive several emails about the modification of the property. The first one came from Greg Smith.
Parcel F.
Yeah, parcel F. We need to get that on the agenda.
I think we've got that roughly scheduled for April 1st. We just called it comp plan
Okay.
implementation, I think is what we called it. Yeah, but there's a typo in there too, but.
Okay.
Rhonda, I'm going to be out April 1st and May 6th.
And I'll be out June 10th.
When? June 10?
May 6th.
June 10th.
Me.
April 1st.
Yeah. Well,
That's Bill.
I'm out April 1st.
so we'll have 3 people here.
April Fools.
Wait, but if we're doing the citizen grant review stuff, how's that gonna work?
You got 3 people to approve it.
I know, but if we're out for certain things, like if certain people apply that we're conflicted out on,
I'm not conflicted. Who's conflicted?
I am if it's Pathfinders.
Oh,
We could move it.
we can still, we'll still have 3.
Let's see how it comes out, and if we need to address it at that point, let's address it at that point. And if it is just one line item, we could approve the rest of it and leave one
Yeah.
line item out. Let's tackle that when we get closer.
Okay, anything else?
I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about it now, but to get something on the agenda about the post office and not so much what's happening with the center's remodel, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about getting possibly some people who want to work at the Snowmass post office on our housing list and have a little more priority, because the crisis we had last Christmas and is still going on, we have nobody that works in our local post office that lives out here. And I don't know, again, I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about it now, but if we could do it as an agenda item, and I'd like to talk to Betsy about it, about getting them on a priority list for the rental. Because I think it's important, as this village is growing, that we have local people working in our local post office.
And I received a letter today from another homeowner talking about what's happening in the post office. It took me 15 days to get a certified letter from Grand Junction into my box.
So I know every time we bring this up, somebody says it's a postal issue, we must be able to do something. We have to do something.
We've got to do something. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what, does the town have to send a letter to Washington DC? I don't know what it is, but we need to do something grassroots-wise, and that is to have local people get to the priority list as long as they're working for the Snowmass Post Office. they could have a priority list on the rental unit, or, I don't know what the issue is yet, but I think we need to discuss it. That's all I have.
I don't think you're gonna get any argument from anybody else.
There is no argument. Something's gotta happen. here.
Everybody has their own stories.
Yeah.
Everybody's got
That's
their own
right,
stories.
that's right. That's right.
Clint, you wanna put it on the agenda, please? It's not gonna probably do us any good, but,
Yeah.
but a letter to, who was the one that wrote to Corey Gardner recently? No, it's over in Aspen,
No.
was it
Actually,
Aspen?
actually, I know someone who just last week was able to file a complaint in Washington. I'll find out
Okay,
from where or whom they filed it.
okay. Okay, anything else on the agenda? Any other absences that's going to occur that you know of? Okay, all in support of the draft agenda, the modification on that one set of minutes on 2-2. All in support, say aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. Okay, we're moving on to policy and legislative public hearings. The first is an ordinance amending the 2019 budget for the general fund, marketing, capital equipment reserve fund, post-grant fund, and the CIP fund for the town of Snowmass Village. Mary Ann's already up here, so, okay, Mary Ann.
Okay, in your packet is a summary on pages 62, 63, and 64 on how each fund ended 2018. These are currently unaudited numbers. We did have the auditors in town last week, and we continue to work on them and pull information as they request it. All funds ended with a positive increase in fund balance, with the exception of the lottery fund, in which we had budgeted $30,000 in lottery revenue, and we only received $28,000, so that was a decrease. The purpose of ordinance is it revises the 2019 to include items that were either budgeted to be spent in 2018 and were not spent, or they were savings and expenditures to be reallocated for 2019. When we get to second reading, we do have a few more expenses that we need to add to this list for building equipment, items that were budgeted in 18 that we did not include in this carryover. So we'll include those in the 2008, or the second reading for this 2019 ordinance. I can go page by page through this packet, or you can just ask me questions, or however you would like to do this.
Well, let me just go, I'm on 64 of 99 in this huge packet that was in our box. Now, if I read this correctly, it looks like in 2018, our total fund balance that we did budget was $19,912,769, correct?
Correct.
And our actual came in at $45,570,000?
Correct, but if you look on page 63, you'll see the CIP fund, that's showing a $9 million increase. And the reason why that was so large was when we did this same exact process in 2018, the CIP had actually budgeted a fund balance carryover of $43,000, and you can see it's showing a negative $3,853,000. That was because in March of 2018, we had carried over an additional $3.8 million in projects, but the budget was budgeted based on what we had anticipated ending 2017 with. And so the budget number is actually a little bit different than what the actual numbers are. So that's the bulk of it.
Well, I see 6 million sitting up in, was it 6 million sitting in fund balance up in the general fund?
And the
too?
general fund was 6.4, and the rep fund was another 4 million, road another million, excise tax $1 million, another million in the marketing fund. So you could go fund by fund to see where the real major changes were.
So, I mean, the
First page
biggest,
is
the
really
biggest
most
being the CIP.
Right.
Correct.
So, okay, I'm like a broken record, but I'm gonna just say it again. I think that the way we approve projects is troublesome. Troublesome to me that we have a $9 million variance, and it's only because we didn't complete projects, and we book the total cost of a project that may take 3 or 4 years to finish. And it throws off, I mean, it just throws off our whole, or to me, it throws off the whole budget to actual, system.
Reality.
Because it looks like our budgets to actual are nowhere near close to one another. But in reality, they are. And what throws it off is the capital improvements.
And I would, and the best argument I can make, and I'm not an accountant, and I would never put my accounting techniques up against yours or Mary Ann's, but from a
I'm
non-accountant
not an accountant either.
financial analysis. But what I would argue is, the reason we do it this way is we don't get into projects halfway and then run out of money. And we make as one, and we need money for phase 2, and we didn't.
It's the big ticket things that take a long time.
And so take the, let me make up a number for the upcoming Rodeo Place project. We've got $3 million in here that we intend
Yeah,
to go to
right.
subsidy, but the overall construction of that's gonna be closer to $10 million and closer to 2 years of construction. When we sign a contract with ABC Contractor to do that $10 million project, we need to have $10 million in the bank to go under contract.
Okay.
And that's gonna be a 2-year, whatever.
But let's go back. Let's go back to the 3 or 4 that we've approved.
Correct.
When we approved that 3.4 last year, did it start in 18 or 17?
17.
I think it was.
Okay, so in 17, we approved 3.4. We've spent,
Not much, half a
Not
million.
much.
$500,000, say,
okay, $500,000. And that $500,000 has been on
into 20 and 21 as we finish.
Is there any way we can get a list of existing projects, large projects, and what the status is?
You could do it right this second, sure.
So when I look at this, I looked at that 6 million variance just in the general fund. I see what's outstanding is bike washing stand, whatever that is.
Dollars, right?
Yeah, that's not a lot of money. Laserfish project has been a project ongoing now for, what, 2 years?
At least, I mean, and that's one of those that's, we continually, I was gonna say hack at it, but we continue nibble around it and try and get more and more improvements. It's a records-keeping project that we put a large chunk of money on year 1, and we spend down a third at a time, basically.
So, to me, those are just ongoing improvements, capital improvements.
Right.
And the GIS, the finance software, the land use code, which is 50,000, wildfire mitigation. I'm looking at those, and these are ongoing expenditures. They're almost like a maintenance that you can anticipate.
And we do those under, we call it under the line, which are one-time revenues, and we do that for a couple of reasons. One of the largest is if we ever have to cut, we don't ever take let me take a number, wildfire, just, we put certain number of dollars in that, and we try not to inflate our ongoing operational budget by that one-time expense.
see,
We keep
okay.
it below the line, and that helps us to make sure that we're not otherwise inflating line items. That's the reason we separate those expenses out. It's one of the good reasons we separate those expenses out. Laserfish, whatever, land use code. We know that's gonna be a one-time expense. Now that the comp plan is adopted, we didn't wanna put that into a service contract line item and, have that somehow grow to 70,000 and have that service line item stay there. We identify it as a one-time expense and keep it below, and that's one of the ways we monitor it. Our savings from 15% to 25%
Yeah.
over the last couple of years. We've identified funds available, and we have spent from those funds available towards capital investment, yes.
Okay, so we moved from 19 up to 45. and with the actual results. And every year we talk about this deficit budget that we approve, and every year, at the end of the year, we come in very positive.
But you have to remember, the deficit budget, say in the general fund, is mostly just using funds that we've set aside in a savings account. So we've taken the money from our funds available and we've put them in these savings accounts. So like building 6, we received the $700,000 from the developer. We put that in a special reserve fund because we know we're going to spend that in the future. That's part of that deficit. And transfers out to, the CIP fund, those are monies that already were transferred into the CIP. They're sitting there specifically for those projects, waiting to be spent.
We're not, I mean, when I hear deficit budget, in my brain, in my bureaucratic brain, I hear that we're borrowing to hit the budget. We're not borrowing, we're taking from savings. We've already got the cash on hand. And in that 1 year, we might spend, our expenses might be higher than our revenues, but that's because we've saved up that savings account and spent from there.
Like the solar project and the micro hydro project, that's about $1 million. We're using funds that were already set aside in a reserve account for the Holy Cross Community Enhancement Fund. We're taking that $1 million from that savings account.
So technically, we bring in $100,000 a year. We've saved up for a number of years. We've got $1 million in the savings account. Because we only bring in $100,000 and we're spending $1 million, someone could very articulately and accurately say that's deficit spending. I would argue, well, we've saved for a number of years and we've got it. It's in the bank, and so it's not. And it's a fair discussion to have, and I'm happy we continue to have it, but it's not like we're borrowing for it.
Is that $900,000 or $1 million that's in a special account, is that part of the fund balance?
It is, it's part of the total fund balance. It's just set aside. So if you go to page,
Is it the restricted, part of the restricted or part of the available?
so if you go to page 65,
Okay?
at the bottom, there's a section that's called Fund Balance.
Yep.
Designations and Reserves. So these are all the appropriations that we have set aside separately, or they're non-spendable accounts, like the inventory.
Okay, so there's the Holy Cross Enhancement Fund.
Yep, the building equipment, when I was speaking about coming back at second reading with some of the projects that are coming out of the capital reserves, you can see the building equipment reserve funds. So those are set aside for those capital projects for building and equipment. And once we have that list, we'll add it to ordinance number 2 for second reading.
So Mary Ann, excuse me,
Go ahead.
that includes the TABOR requirements?
The TABOR requirement is the third line down. It says TABOR dash reserve.
Okay.
That's 3% of the fiscal year spending.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is that in and amongst the 25% that we're putting aside, or is that?
That's separate from the
Separate.
25%. If you go further down, you'll see emergency reserve, 25% of operating revenue. At the end of 2018, $0.3 million. That's separate from the TABOR reserve.
Okay.
Any other questions? So, if there's no further questions, do I have a motion for approval on ordinance number 2?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2 on the first reading, series 2019.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further questions? I did have one other question, and in the marketing fund, there's an expenditure or a reserve or a plan for emotive marketing initiative? What is
So-
emotive?
We did not spend the total dollars with our advertising agency last year. It was about 150 difference. They wanted to do something creative. We've authorized them $12,000 to come up with an idea, and if they hit some home run idea that we want to implement on, we would use those dollars. But they're trying to come up with something based on emotions and something super. Here's how I explain it: is that It's not corporate cool, it's actually really cool, and they're trying to do something neat, and we'll see if they can do it or not.
So why are we approving it before, why are we even having it in the budget before we even see what what ideas they're coming up with?
The only answer, because we didn't spend it, we could roll over. We've authorized $12,000 already
Right.
from different thing.
That's okay.
And it would, at that point, what you're saying is you're willing to spend an extra 150 over and above what you thought this year. And I wouldn't bring that project back. That would probably go to the marketing board and get some kind of thumbs up on that. But the dollars are available if we want to. If the dollars aren't available, I'll stop the project because there's dollars aren't available to spend.
Well, the dollars are available to do a brainstorm or a study or whatever they're gonna do.
Right.
And whether the dollars are available to go further than that will depend on what they come up with.
Correct.
So just approve the study.
Done. And so then if you want to bring back that project, we can bring back, I'll be one of these. We can come back, line up.
Under your proposal, if you will, we don't know if those didn't get executed, or if we didn't have time, or if there was some other reason why they didn't get started. And it appears to me that we routinely budget a lot more capital improvement than we can possibly get done within an annual timeframe. And, I don't think that's particularly good budgeting. You should have a pretty good idea of what you can accomplish, and you should work with what you're gonna accomplish. Not that you don't have a laundry list of things you want, but you can't, you can't do everything you can't do everything in 1 year.
Agreed. And the only, again, we do, like, there's projects we're bringing back in the reserves that Mary Ann just talked about. We know that we can hit at least half of them. And the idea is that the dollars are available and we get hot and we get rolling, we can get going. And if the dollars aren't there, then we just come back to this and we talk about them and we say, all right, well, we need the dollar. Which comes first, the appropriation or the project being ready? We've erred on having the appropriation ready. And if it's not, we have these discussions. It's like, here's why we didn't get them done, and ask for it. It's either way is fine,
Hey,
but we're asking for that kind of
I'm
proactive
gonna
approval.
defer to my fellow counselors on this, and whichever way they rather prefer to go, I will just stop. If it's not,
Ready to go to the next item, or do you need a break?
I'm all right.
You okay? Good? Okay, we're gonna move right on. The next is an ordinance amending
April 30th. This is, I think, a synthesis of your discussions. I'm sure there are some things that perhaps were discussed in different ways at different times and may not reflect. But when you had those discussions, you did not have straw votes. Depending on who was present, there were one thing and another thing. So this is what we came up with. You should understand that all of the state regulations, 274 pages, are included by virtue of this ordinance, and then you have your local rules and regulations on top.
So I apologize, I did not open the public hearing, so, or is it a continuation?
There's no public hearing.
Okay, I thought it said it was public hearing, okay.
That's-
But I will take comments from the public as well.
I'm sorry.
Are we looking at page 1111? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it's that marijuana district, it was the district that is at the.
And what are you concerned about across the road?
The intersection of Lower Kearns Road and Brush Creek, and at a school bus stop. It's conical.
That's Upper Kearns.
It'd be Upper Kearns, right?
Upper or lower, it's up, yeah, depends on which way you turn in.
Oh, Lower's that way.
Okay, well,
And
okay.
upper goes into the roundabout. But this is how we get crossways when everybody's not clear about what everybody's talking about.
So it's where the current location of the Conoco is.
And currently, it's proposed to be in the district for it allowed for sales to occur.
Right. And my goal goes back to our earlier conversation about school bus stops and about busy intersections and visibility from public areas.
Well,
I'm fine with the Snowmass Center.
John, we've covered viewing from Brush Creek Road, haven't we?
Pardon?
We've covered I think, the signage from Brush Creek Road.
We've discussed it.
I don't know that you effectively discuss signage.
Well, we discussed not being able
Okay.
to see it from Brush Creek,
Yeah.
but it is not projected in this document, those discussions.
Well, okay, and if what is in here is that the sign code that applies in Snowmass Village applies to this.
Right, but we're not talking about the size of the sign.
I get it, but the code covers it.
The code covers which way it can face? Right.
Okay, but I'm not convinced that there was unanimous, watching your tapes, et cetera, defaulted to the code and the comprehensive sign plan for the other properties within the entertainment district. I am very happy to have you all, as you review this ordinance, to make motions to amend, have them seconded and voted so that it can be very clear as you go to first reading and second reading.
Okay,
But the discussions have gone in many different directions.
that is correct.
And the resolution of each discussion,
Brush Creek.
Well, we talked about it, but John's very accurate in that there was a lot of discussion, let's just put it that way. And we may not have had consensus or hands up.
and here we are to do that. And I'm not saying that this signage to inclusion in the district, correct?
Both.
Let's go one issue at a
Okay.
time.
Okay, let's talk about
Because if
signage.
it ends up not in the district,
Okay.
signage is a moot point.
Okay, so let's talk about it being in the district.
I thought we covered the district in regards to Upper Kearns Road, and we agreed.
No, we didn't.
Well, then make a motion,
Oh,
and then we'll.
I move that we remove any property at the intersection of Upper Kearns and Brush Creek from consideration within that district for cannabis sales.
Does that also include that other building?
Any property in that intersection is what I heard. So I don't know what the definition.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, do you want to call out a particular area, or do you want to have a buffer along Brush Creek Road?
Want to have a buffer on, it's a very good suggestion, buffer between Upper Kearns, Lower Kearns, and Brush Creek.
So similar
would
to our buffer to the
Ski hills.
the ski hill, we could have, you're suggesting maybe like 100-foot buffer from Brush Creek Road?
Yeah. So that would include, if we want to name the people, it would be Alpine Bank property and Conoco.
Well, we don't know how far 100 feet goes.
Where's our fancy smancy Travis?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I have that map, but I'll look for it.
It's in the packet. Oh, the workable map.
Right. With the 100-foot buffer from Brush Creek?
Yeah.
No,
the buffer.
To the buffer. I'm not in favor.
And I'm not,
Don't even bother.
Because, Marky, I think you're trying to pigeonhole property owners who are there now based on information that people have said to you, both one way and the other, both the Conoco and the Alpine Bank. And those properties may not be there in the future.
The reason why I am not pigeonholing, it's information that we've all been shared, we all have that information. The point of the matter is, there is a bus stop there, a school bus stop. We talked about the children getting off and on the bus there. We've also talked about busy corners and visibility from Brush Creek.
Well, that's a different issue. Let's just talk about the
My
buildings.
issue is that we've got children
Because-
there, and it's a busy intersection,
Okay.
and it faces Brush Creek Road.
Right. Visibility is a different thing, and we potentially have can have a discussion on visibility vis-a-vis signage.
Which is where I was going until I was asked to name the property.
No, you
I
were
said Brush Creek and Upper Kearns.
you were asking to add to the buffer,
Yes.
okay? That's different than discussing the signage requirements.
Well, I know that.
Okay,
So we're talking about the buffer now.
right, we are. Yeah, and I'm not in favor of a buffer, and I am willing to discuss signage requirements for visibility.
I do think, though, not the Alpine Bank building or whatever that building is called, but the Conoco building, I do think that it could present a serious traffic issue with people. If there's so many people turning in there and trying to come out, it's not great.
Well, do you think if in fact, you're talking about the Alpine Bank?
No, I'm talking about where the Conoco is.
Okay.
Because the only way in
You
and out.
think there's gonna
is
be
by
a
the-
lot more traffic than there is now getting in and
do.
out of a gas station?
I do, actually.
Okay,
I mean, I don't know. I really do.
okay.
But that's just me.
Bill, where are you?
Well, what are we looking at there, Travis?
These were the buffers we looked at, I think in October from Brush Creek Road. So my cursor is following Brush Creek Road. The red would be a 100-foot radius from center line. The orange would be a 200-foot radius, and the yellow there would be 300 feet. So this is Town Hall here, just for reference, and this would be the Snowmass Center. And the Conoco is right there.
So then you have to do 200.
You'd have to have a 200-foot buffer.
I don't know, we've got a lot of buffers. I think it can be addressed with the sign code.
Okay, no buffer. Okay, then moving on to signage.
Does that mean the rest of the district is okay?
That's exactly what that means.
Okay.
So signage. Need to find that in here. I would like to propose any signage cannot face Brush Creek Road. Any comments?
Well, I think we have language
in
that
here
suggests
somewhere.
it can't face Carriage Road, right?
Yeah, so you just expand that to say Brush Creek.
What does the language say?
I don't see.
It's in here for carriageway.
Which page is it on?
No, it's
It's
just
not in there at all.
It's not in here.
the
No,
municipal
but where-
sign
what are you
code and
reading?
the comprehensive sign plan.
It's on page 4, number 3, under Roman numeral 3.
Yes.
The last paragraph, it says, complies with state retail marijuana code, Snowmass Village Municipal Code, and any comprehensive sign plans adopted for a commercial area. It doesn't say anything about specific roads.
So what would you propose to add there?
We would add carriageway and Brush Creek.
Why Carriageway?
We already approved that one.
No, we didn't. We didn't approve any of them.
Because we were talking about some of those places along Carriageway that could potentially become
Yes, we did.
shops. And we were talking about how weird it would be if you were going up Carriageway and those signs were right there along the roadside.
We had that conversation.
We did
all
have the
agreed.
conversation. We never agreed on
and
anything,
Rhonda's
but we did have a
agreed, yeah.
conversation.
We had the conversation.
Yeah.
We all agreed.
I don't think we all agreed.
Well, I think where we ended up was that it's pretty hard to limit a business to, and you can, Carriageway is pretty, I mean, it's a pretty broad statement, because you could stand almost anywhere on Carriageway and see something. So I think the sign code, because it's the same as the mall, I mean, it's gonna limit the size of the sign.
There was a point, Bill, you brought it up in our last discussion about we shouldn't have a small sign. Not necessarily. We should not limit it to such a small sign. It should be a sign that people could see. And I think we all agreed with that, and I know I did.
Well, I didn't.
Well,
Talked about it as having the picture of a weed and then,
no, not the weed. I think it was the green cross
Yeah,
or
or yeah,
whatever it
green.
was. You
The
know.
green cross.
It was the green
But
cross.
I mean,
we
I'm
talked
fine with having the sign code match everything else that we're doing. I think that's appropriate. I mean, we don't want to give anybody additional signage.
so what I hear the three of you saying is when guests come into our town, one of the very first signs that they will see when they make the turn up towards Base Village could be a green cross at the Conical. And going up Carriageway Road, whether it be on public transportation and or in their cars, they're gonna see, potential to see more green crosses. Is that correct?
That's what they're saying.
That's exactly what they're saying. Welcome to Snowmass.
That's not fair to say that, because the welcome to
Well, that is
Snowmass
what you're saying.
welcome to Snowmass is down at the beginning of the entrance, okay? So, I mean, now I still believe that you're stalling, okay? And we're just gonna keep doing this, okay? I think we just need to move on.
Tom, I have to disagree. I don't think she's stalling. I think that this ordinance that John wrote, and it was one of the things that I noted, I didn't feel like it properly addressed our discussion on signage.
Well,
And
no,
I would have to say
we could
that
discuss the signage, I
if I
agree,
was
but I don't
coming
agree
up-
with the statement that she just said.
Okay,
That
but-
people come into town, the first thing they see is welcome to Snowmass is a green cross.
No.
That's not true.
But if you're coming up, the first life of like commercial node is you see the sign from the Conoco. And I agree that I don't think it would be great to have the Conoco sign with a green cross on it. I personally agree with that. I think it's fine if it's on the side of the building, but I think having it there plastered in people's faces is not a great idea.
I kind of agree with you there. You don't have to be facing the obvious road right there. It could be on the side. It could be where the garage is. It could be on the backside
That's where I
facing
was
Mama
going with
Maria's.
that. So
Oh, not
was
Mama
not-
Maria's.
All
Sorry,
right,
Mike.
how do we
Tasters.
word that?
Probably signage
Sign cannot be
facing Brush
Brush
Creek
Creek
or Carriageway.
Carriageway.
Yes. That's what
I mean, if you were coming down Carriageway and you were looking, like, for instance, where the transportation office is, like, there could be a sign there, but I think it's more of like you wouldn't want it facing this way. Like, it's fine if it's this way, but not this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
No, not to
well,
me.
Well, it makes it, like, I'm saying, like,
You
You know where it's
south, east,
facing-
west, north, then I'd know what you're talking about.
No.
When you go like
facing,
that,
facing parallel.
yes, like, for
Parallel.
instance, like the sign for
Parallel
Aspenwood or
to
any of
Brush
those
Creek
places that
or-
are up there. That it's sitting, it sits so as you're coming up, it's like sitting facing out towards the road. It's more of like, that it can be on the building of where, the door, of wherever the place is, but it's not facing out. Is that
Let's-
what-
let's
Okay.
use the transportation office as an example.
Right.
Carriageway comes like this. The front door faces Elbert Lane.
Right,
The side faces Carriageway.
right,
Where could the sign be?
On
The
Elbert
side
Lane.
or the front? On Elbert Lane.
yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think
I'm
it's
just trying to make sure you're all discussing the
So,
same
No,
thing
I
so
know,
that
I
we
know.
parallel
understand.
is a good suggestion, parallel to Brush Creek
Creek.
and
Carriageway.
Way.
And I don't think that's not, I mean, I feel like that's, you're not taking away the signs for anybody.
I get it, but you're putting in a recipe for disaster.
Why?
Look at how Carriageway goes like this. Where are you gonna judge where it's parallel and where it's facing? Way from Carriageway.
You're talking about the Willows. Well, you can't have a marijuana shop in private property. Right?
Well, you can't have them on public property according to the state, so they're gonna be on private property.
Any of those like little off, like management, or there's places that Clint was talking to me about that are along Carriageway that you said potentially they could go. We had that discussion, correct?
Everything in the green could potentially go.
Like
That's
the little
zoned
offices.
commercial.
That's zone commercial.
Family,
Okay,
residential,
okay,
single
fine,
family.
Okay. So why would parallel not work?
I'm just saying that there are curves that where you're coming up, they could be on the side of a building that's, anyway.
So, John, let's talk about Carriageway for a time being.
Okay.
So the buildings that appear to be under concern are the commercial buildings that would be along Carriageway. Are the condos and hotels, along, or condo hotels along Carriageway, are they considered commercial? Are they zoned commercial is really the question, because that's what they would need to be to fit within the language.
They have commercial, depending on their declarations and how their ownership is structured. They could, the Stonebridge has a frontage that is commercial,
A frontage,
frontage onto Carriageway,
as would Timberline?
Timberline as well.
Okay.
And do we have any rules and regulations against advertising alcohol along Carriageway or Brush Creek?
We have a municipal sign code and a comprehensive sign plan at the mall. So yes, we do.
So based on the state regulation that we're supposed to be following, basically the same rules for alcohol, I just propose that we just follow the same rules and regs for alcohol.
I don't remember all of those.
Well, there are actually stricter signage in the state retail marijuana code than alcohol.
Okay. So what's in our town code here for alcohol sales?
We don't regulate it.
Okay,
I mean, we regulate the signage,
Signage.
not the content.
Well, that idea sounded great, but doesn't sound like it's gonna work. So, remember this, the regulations can be modified, correct?
Absolutely.
So if we propose to put parallel to Brush Creek and Carriage Way, would we all be comfortable with that language for right now?
I'd be comfortable because I want to move forward. I think we need to get beyond this, and yet, to answer your question, yes.
It's fine with me. I mean,
There's three of us. Bob?
Let's just do it.
Bill?
What about a sign that's perpendicular? I mean, for just the sake of conversation, I mean, if you're gonna put one on the Conoco sign and it's facing directly as you're driving up Brush Creek Road, I mean, that's having a probably greater impact than something that's parallel.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, it's in front of the building and blah, blah, blah. So, we're to the building.
Yeah, well, that's perpendicular. It could be the downhill side, it could be the uphill side,
Side of a building?
yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's tricky. It's up
It's
for
very tricky.
interpretation.
It's gonna, I mean, if we do anything, it's gonna be tricky.
We have support for parallel. I think you raised.
I mean, I think the whole point is that it's just, it's like when you come into Glenwood and it's like right in your face, like right in those little houses that are along the Grand Avenue. It's like right there. And I think the whole point is that just not making it right in your face. So I don't know what the right wording is for that, but it's basically not on the facade that's right in your face when you're coming up the road. I mean, I think what Marky's trying to say, I feel the same way. I don't like that feeling when you're coming.
That's
That's
fine.
well said.
I mean, I'm struggling
Significant
because,
visual
because,
impact.
Yes.
because discretion without any definitive is,
I think significant visual impact is good.
Okay?
So do you want the signage seen from Brush Creek or absolutely not seen?
no, well,
Oh.
the mayor says she's no. I don't care if it's seen from Brush Creek.
I don't want to see it. I
And I'm
don't
just
want
trying to
s-
put myself in the shoes of the municipal judge who's trying to determine
The
significant
point,
visual
I
impact.
think the point that I'm trying to make, and Alyssa's trying to make, is when you drive into Snowmass Village, and whether you live here or whether you're a guest, is one of the things that when you come in to our village, and right as we make, where all of our tourists come, do we want the visual image of a green cross?
And you're looking at it. Just
So-
like everybody looks at that sculpture, they would look at the sign.
So Alyssa, hang on a second.
What?
Why, can we just sort this out and say all signage must be attached to the building? And therefore, you won't have a sign on the street?
That could work.
Does that take care of that problem?
I think it does.
Yeah, it should. Okay. Okay, we've got the signage taken care of, okay,
Well,
and the roads.
we got the
Well,
signage.
And we got the roads. and
Let's
major-
let's get a review of the signage, because, so besides having to comply with our town sign code, it has to be attached to the building.
Has to be attached to the building and cannot be parallel to Carriage Way and/or Brush Creek.
You know, if my memory serves, the signage is something like 1 foot by 2 foot.
It's in here.
And if you put a 1 foot by 2 foot sign on a building that's 50 feet off the road, or even more than that, because as we saw the buffer, you're gonna drive up there and you're gonna go by it and it isn't gonna register. It's not something that's gonna be in your face.
I'm trying to find where,
Where-
John,
where-
what was the sign?
It's
Where-
not in there.
I didn't think so.
It's not in there.
The only thing about the signage is that section that I read.
So, let me ask this. We did agree on the size of the sign, correct, John?
No.
Yes, we did.
We did agree, but it's not in there.
Well, we didn't write it, yeah.
Well, it has to comply with the state
Well,
retail
that's the
marijuana
state,
code
it's the state law, it's the state,
Correct.
and the comprehensive
Right.
sign plan.
So then we should be fine. Okay. Lissa, you okay?
Sure.
so the signage has to be attached to the
Building,
building.
and it has to
And
comply.
it has to comply with the state
Right.
regs. Okay. Okay.
What are we doing about Carriageway and Brush Creek?
Well, that's
That's-
carriageway in
that's
Brush
correct.
Creek.
That's,
I mean, it'll be for everything.
Okay.
And then it doesn't have to be carriageway in Brush Creek. We don't have to, we don't have to single them out. It'll be for everything.
Okay. Moving on, what's the next thing? I had one over here.
I mean, I had a lot of problems with this ordinance. I'm not gonna be shy
Why don't we
about that.
do this? Why don't we go page by page and call out the sections? Okay? Would that seem to work for everybody?
We'll try it.
Okay. Let's first start with all the whereases. That goes to page 1 and up through line 63. And those in the general public, assume there's copies back there. You can follow along. Raise your hand if there's any issue. that you-
Are you stopping at 63 for the moment?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm telling the public if you have some issues
Oh,
or you have
okay,
some
I'm
questions.
sorry.
Article 1, which goes from line 69 all the way down to 92.
No,
actually, yeah,
Article 1 goes through to line
Okay,
116.
well, I should said by section.
to 356.
John, I have a question on line 74. As I read that sentence, "to exist in the town of Snowmass Village," parentheses, the town, to the town,
It shouldn't be in there.
that didn't seem to,
That whole paragraph should be flipped. It sounds weird to me. Because you say, in order to provide the time necessary to and then you say consider again later on, and then you say consider again. I would reverse it. Like, I would say, in order to allow town council, town staff, and the citizens of Snowmass Village to consider and develop local regulations pertaining to blah, 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 and to consider, or you say local town licensing requirements.
Okay. Okay, from 82 to 92 line, any comments there?
I don't have anything. I have no problem with it.
no, nothing there.
Okay, now we're going to definitions, section 9.3.
Yeah.
Any questions on 9.3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some, go ahead.
Well, on 105, when it's
Yep.
talking about
Yep.
open and public, it says, which includes this place to which public or a substantial number of public. It just seems like a lot of whiches. And I also don't understand why then below it says, it then defines openly and publicly. And the definition of openly, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me. I just didn't know if you need that when you have open and public before that.
Well, open and public means open to the general public. What's the definition of general public? Is that 16-year-olds?
Yes.
Is that what, I thought you had to be 21.
This is a definition so that where it refers to consumption. Okay? So it's talking about defining more specifically the places where you are not allowed to consume. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
And it can be removed, and you can go straight with the state definition. It doesn't matter.
And I don't have a state.
I mean, in the definition of openly, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I've read it like 20 times, and I think it's confusing.
We can delete it.
I don't know.
Well, the question is, what is the intent here?
So, Alyssa, you're talking about line 113 and 114.
Yes, yes.
C, correct?
Yeah. And I just thought under open and public in general.
What this does is makes it stricter
Okay,
than the state regulations. It's more a complete definition. Explains to law enforcement, these are the places where if you see it, it's clearly against our local regulation.
so can I ask you a question then relative to that? So I'm going to use a Thursday night concert, for example. And what this basically says is where it's unaided observation lawfully made within that perimeter, it's just plain not allowed.
Yeah, it's not allowed.
Okay.
But then the openly would be someone on their private deck
Oh,
looking at the Thursday concert, even though it's not public. It would be, that would be one
Okay.
more, that's the
Okay.
level of.
okay, now I understand. Okay, took me a little, okay, now I get it. Makes sense to me. Okay, moving on to section 9.4.
I have a problem in A.
Go for it.
So it's confusing. Well, first of all, here you define the marijuana licensing authority, in quotes, as the local licensing authority. But then throughout the rest of the document, it's the authority. So it either has to be the local licensing authority or the authority. There's no consistency between the two.
Okay, I'll make all those changes.
And then in section A, it says, okay, the hearing officer for the marijuana licensing authority is hereby expressly authorized and empowered to issue only retail marijuana licenses. But my question is, who is authorized, the judge or the licensing authority?
Licensing authority.
Okay, but that's not, to me, that's not how it reads. It means you're saying the judge is it.
He's the hearing officer for the licensing authority. That's what it says.
Right, but
So,
But this is what I would change it to, is hereby created, and the municipal judge shall serve as the hearing officer for the marijuana licensing authority and is expressly authorized. It just is a little confusing.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Sorry.
There's clarity, okay. Okay, do we have problems with B?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Is everybody just
That-
gonna
it's-
hate me right now?
No, this kind of, you do very, very well on editing.
Oh, and B, I would just say, within the town, without a license issued by both local and state
State.
licensing authority. It's just too repetitive. So no person may operate a retail marijuana establishment within the town without a valid license issued by both the local licensing authority and the state licensing authority.
So here begs a question. So if you're in the process of, well, can you open a marijuana license? You've got your state license, and you're in application for license within the community, can you go ahead and open? No, okay, thank you.
Both licenses have to be approved. Yes. That's why I said both the local and the state. It just was repetitive.
Okay. C or D?
What does C mean, each specific business?
If you had multiple stores, you have to have a license for both places.
Like multiple marijuana stores or any kind of store?
If you're a chain operation.
I guess I don't
Specific.
understand what you're saying.
It's a specific business, so it would be each, in this case, each marijuana store.
So each specific store, even if it's like a chain store?
Yeah. If it says
John,
specific business,
John, are you required to have a separate license for medical marijuana versus retail?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Or you, from the beginning, you have said only retail marijuana stores. None of the other licenses are you going to authorize locally.
Okay,
So if you go back there to line 122, it says only
Only
retail
retail,
marijuana
okay.
store licenses as defined,
okay,
and it gives the citation.
okay.
Well, and this brings, also too, in that, in the whereases, you defined retail marijuana establishments, or not defined them, but you put it in quotes as RMJ, but then still, it's written out in some places as retail marijuana establishment, some places it's the shorter RMJ. It should be consistent, whatever we're gonna do.
Okay,
next.
okay, so we did C and D,
No,
right?
D, I have a change.
Okay, what is that?
The town clerk is responsible for providing application forms, get rid of that comma, to prospective applicants. And then I would say for generally supervising all applications throughout the process until completion.
Change the to all.
But the town clerk doesn't supervise it once it's submitted to the hearing office.
Oh,
That's what it's saying here. Saying generally supervising the application process up to the point that an application is complete.
Right. And then it goes to the hearing officer.
Right.
It hasn't been adjudicated, it's complete. In other words, quite often in liquor, we haven't done marijuana, there are certain requirements that an application comes in, it's not complete. Rhonda tells them what's not there. When it's complete, it goes on to the hearing.
Right, and that's what I said, until completion.
well,
Did I say it wrong?
she doesn't supervise the entire process like them sitting down filling out a piece of paper. She's not supervising them filling it out. Supervising the application process.
Okay.
Okay, now let's go on into all the next section, 140, all the way to 181. I had a question on criminal background checks. So how often, I did not find how often we are required to do criminal background checks. Is it just once, the application process?
It's a renewal as well.
So every year?
It can be.
Yeah, I was fine with that, with annual renewal. Okay, so we'll add criminal background checks on an annual basis. And it's the police department that does all the work on the,
You don't need to add that language.
Okay.
When an application comes in, it's
Okay,
required
okay,
to go there.
okay, got
and
it,
the police
okay.
are required to do it.
okay, fine. Okay.
Why in 2 do you capitalize security plan?
Because there is a concern about potential for criminal activity against a retail marijuana store. And there are some local jurisdictions that have come up with the concept of a
plan. The police have requested this, so there's things like, in addition to what the state code requires, a safe, a security system, and those kind of things, and so that is a security plan.
That makes sense to me, because we want to protect for theft. I wouldn't want to lose, if I were an owner, I wouldn't want to lose all of my investment. Okay, any other comments the rest of the way through 3, 4, 5?
I have a comment on 3.
Okay.
That first sentence, I would change it to under 3. The Community Development Department shall promptly review the application to ascertain whether the proposed location of the RMJ is, permitted. And then number 2.
RMJ defines retail marijuana establishment, okay? Retail marijuana store is the licensed premises.
Okay, so fine, store, but still, it's, the way it's written, it's not great. In number 2, it says is not located. It should be, I would get rid of the is, not located within. It just didn't, I don't know, I just didn't think it flowed with the rest of it.
Okay.
And on number 4, you say is not a first or primary level storefront location. I think that's confusing when you're dealing with the mall.
Okay.
Because the first level of the mall is really where the buses are, right?
No.
Yeah, but primary location is not where the buses are.
Primary location's on the mall.
Primary location is the first floor of the mall.
Right.
Which is what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Actually, the primary level is what would apply to the mall.
Right, the primary level.
That's where you walk through.
Right.
The first level applies to the center, because you didn't want them there. So that's the way that would be interpreted.
Okay.
So down low on the mall, up high, somewhere else is okay, but the primary level storefront.
I thought
You
that
can
was fine.
change that any way you'd like.
I like it the way it is. Okay, we're down to 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, wait, stop. For 1 second. The number 5, when it talks about the signage, I felt like that section on the signage didn't fit in the rest of that paragraph. I felt like it should be its own thing.
Well, the Community Development Department is responsible for the municipal sign code, and they also oversee the comprehensive sign plan, so.
No, and I agree with that, but I'm saying, like, here we're saying that they're sitting here trying to ascertain whether, you know, the location is within the zoning and all these things. It just sounded, I know that they're in charge of that, that's in their domain, but it just sounds weird as number 5 when you're looking at the location. Because those other things are talking specifically about location. I don't know, I just felt like it shouldn't be number 5. It should be within their purview, but it needed to.
It is their purview.
Yeah, it is, but it's not, it has nothing to do with the location. And the other three things are talking specifically about location
But
and zoning.
what we're doing here is assigning responsibilities of the application's review. So this is what the Community Development Department is responsible for. That's why there's 5 things under theirs.
I get that.
Okay, if no one else sees it, that's fine. But I'm just saying that it's not, the other things that they're doing are looking at the proposed location. And the signage is not the proposed location.
But, okay.
But it's fine.
Yeah, we're going
How would you like it redone?
No, it's fine, just leave it.
But my point is when there's a new establishment going into the center, regardless of it's a marijuana or anything, they make sure that all the criteria for location, signage, parking, all those things, that's what community development takes care of. So that's why it's all in this paragraph.
I'm fine with the way it's written.
I agree that it should be in the paragraph. I wasn't saying it shouldn't be in the paragraph.
Okay.
I was just saying that the other things are specifically saying what the location, what the limitations are for the location.
And the signage is not a limitation on the location, so it was just a little bit confusing. That's all I was saying.
Well, let's clarify it then.
But we can, it's fine, just leave it.
Well, you can modify as you come in to the three. The Community Development Department shall promptly review the application to ascertain that the retail marijuana store is proposed to be located on the premises and has a signage that complies with whatever. So then it lays out that responsibility in 5.
Yeah, I mean, just because the way it's
Just put that
looking is that
modifier
it's
in.
saying that they're looking at the specific location, the premises.
Okay, so that's
That's
what.
all I was saying, but if you don't want to change it, it's
No.
fine, just leave it.
Just
Change it to what?
Well, what I
asked.
just what I said, where you have review the application to ascertain that the retail marijuana store is proposed to be located on a premise and signage meets whatever code this is, way down here, Snowmass Village Municipal Code and Comprehensive Sign Plans,
Okay.
something like that. And then, to me, it's not awkward. Okay, let's move on. Now we're down to 182, page 4, and the top, let's go all the way through the end of page 5 of the ordinance, page 83 of 99. Anybody on page
Wait,
5?
hold on. Oh, F on 194.
Okay,
F is like, just, there's so much going on in F. It's like this huge run-on sentence that goes on forever. And it has a lot of information in it that's important, but like, some of it doesn't even make sense to me.
okay, what doesn't make sense?
That first sentence, it should say pursuant to the provisions of the Retail Marijuana Code governing procedures of the, I don't know, it's just like, there's something about that, the whole thing.
Well, it's a long sentence.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the information gets lost in there. I don't know.
It's probably straight from the regs. Personally, I was fine with it once
I'm okay with it.
okay.
The only thing I saw on that page is on line 218.
Okay,
It says the location of the retail marijuana store
It's wrong, that sentence.
is
Should
not,
say
it
not
should,
within.
it should say, after retail marijuana store, it says is not within 300 feet of any state licensed childcare facility
It
or
should be
other
like the
retail
sentence above it.
marijuana store.
yep,
It's missing not within.
It's missing not within.
okay. Is there anything else on this page? I'm moving on to page 84, which is page 6, for those who usually have a handout. I have a question all the way down to transfer of ownership.
What, oh, that's on line 270?
Yeah, I had a question on this one. Transfer of ownership of any license shall be governed by the standards and procedures set forth in the Retail Marijuana Code and regs adopted pursuant thereto, blah, 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 blah. The way that I read this, and I will be honest with you, I did not go back and look at the state code. Isn't a change in ownership, does that also require a criminal background check?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other part of that, does the town have any right to approve a change of ownership?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Well,
all I needed to know.
the authority.
Okay, okay.
On L,
Okay, you're back up, okay.
It should say, I think there should be a period after good cause. And then a new sentence, no license shall be renewed. And then also, I wanted to know why, in some paragraphs, the word state is capitalized, state licensing authority, and some it's not.
You sure did a better job on detail, man.
Well, this is my life.
You know, I wouldn't want to be doing homework for you, I know that.
Sorry. I just can't help it. Just like the budget makes Bob crazy, this makes me crazy.
Spaces and notwithstanding there.
Where? Where is it?
An L.
Yeah, there should be. I didn't notice it. See, I don't pick everything up on the first go round.
Okay, we're over on page 8, which is the last page of this ordinance. And then once we get through this, then I'll be taking public comment.
On Q.
Q. I gotta find Q.
Wait, is that right?
It's page 7.
LMNOP, yeah.
The Q, line 280.
It took me a second, yeah. Q, line 286. I think,
Wrong side of the page.
it should say surrounding the licensed premises, period. And then each licensee shall designate a manager or employee. I just felt like that last part of it got lost, and that was sort of important. And then,
Well, I was still hoping to put in that they had to be registered voter within our community or in the Roaring Fork Valley, but I think John has told me we just can't do that. Or must be a resident of the state of Colorado.
Well, they're
Even
gonna
the
be a
state's going
manager.
away from that, so.
I know.
They gotta be a manager or employee of the property, so
Hope so.
you would think they'd show up once in a while.
You think. Go ahead.
that first paragraph under 9.5, that last part of it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it should say set forth in the applicable code and administrative regulations, period. A violation of this chapter or the terms and conditions, there was something not right about it. Unless I just was reading it wrong.
Which line are you on?
It's that last section, that first
294.
paragraph.
94.
It says,
Okay.
set forth in the applicable code, the applicable administrative regulations, a violation of this chapter or the terms, I don't know, I read it like 3 times, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong. But I thought it should be set forth in the applicable code and administrative regulations, period. A violation of this chapter, comma, or the terms and blah, 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 the rest of it. I don't know. It didn't seem right, but maybe that's the way it's supposed to
I
be.
can see breaking that up.
Okay.
And under A, I thought it should say that you may take the following factors into consideration, colon, and then put the various factors. It was weird the way it was.
What line is that?
Well, it just says that a civil penalty or a fine in lieu or in addition to suspension or revoke the license authority may consider the nature and seriousness of the violation. And then it lists all the things that they can take into consideration, but I think you should say, may take the following factors into consideration, colon, because,
And list them A through,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it gets confusing that those are the factors that they're looking at, the way it's written.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay. Do you have any comments on B? Anyone? Okay, flipping the page to 8. We're getting close, guys. Any comments on page 8? I did have a question on change of business organization structure.
Yeah,
Is this one of those, if you were you had a partnership and one wanted to buy out somebody else and now they become a C Corp and stuff like that? Is that what this refers to?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
On 9.6,
9.6.
it's talking about the different things that are, the different acts that are punishable.
I see, okay.
So I feel like it should say the following acts are prohibited and unlawful unless otherwise specified. The following are punishable as set forth in section I-72. And then you list the different things, but I feel like when you say possession, use, or consumption of marijuana, then you need to break it out underneath maybe what the different offenses are, because I like to see what the different acts are, and then under each, it just is a lot in that paragraph, and I'm losing what the actual act that's punishable is versus what you're.
Well, the first sentence of each A, B, and C is the act that
Right.
is unlawful.
Right.
And then the following following sentences are the
Right, it says that, I'm just saying.
punishment.
If you could like put the punishments indented underneath it or something. It just is like, then it, because I feel like you're losing what it is. That's just me, it's a visual thing.
I didn't have any problems with it, but okay, it's visual. Okay, anything else, guys?
Nope. Nope.
Okay. I think we're through that, and I'll, if there's any
So there were a couple things that I had originally when I went through this that I thought were glaring problems. The number one problem I had was I couldn't tell who, in fact, was the local licensing authority. I understand who the hearing officer is, but is that the sum and substance of your local licensing authority? I don't know. I can't tell. So I understand you have various organizations involved, but is that the local licensing authority? I don't know. The next thing I had concern about, but similarly, was the appointment of, currently it's Lawson Wills, I believe is your judge in the municipal court, and he's wonderful, but my concern is a conflict. He is sitting as both a hearing officer deciding what's going on for the establishment, and then he has a matter in court where he's supposed to be an impartial arbitrator over the matter, you know, and listening to the prosecution and the defense, and he already has full knowledge of what's happening. So I don't know if he is the proper person or not. I know what other jurisdictions do, but I don't know if you had thought of that, that would create that conflict.
Give us an example of what other jurisdictions do.
So Glenwood Springs has a single person who is the hearing officer. She is just a local, she's an attorney. Her name's Angela Roth. You know, I don't particularly think that she's, you know, they've had her sitting there for a very long time. I think the mechanism should involve some sort of term for a person or a community member that, or a part of the government that's not sitting as an arbiter over a potential violation of that in a judicial capacity versus an administrative capacity. So I think there's an inherent conflict. So that's one way Glenwood does it. Aspen has, it's a board, so they have, their local licensing authority is made up of, I don't know how many people it is, maybe five? So there's 5 people that do that, and it is their decision as to what happens. That's another mechanism to do it.
Who appoints that?
The city council. So that's another way. I know that, you know, community involvement is a big deal for you guys, and, you know, maybe that's another level of community involvement that you get. I don't know. But that is obviously a conflict. Another issue that I saw in section 9.6 had to do with, I don't know what a special event is, and I assume it's defined someplace else in your code. So I would simply say, because Alyssa keeps talking about ease of reading, to put in a cross-reference so that people know what you're talking about. Because I didn't know, I'd have to go, and I did, go looking for a special event, and I did eventually find it. But just, you know, I don't necessarily need the ease of reading for the punishment. I understand what Alyssa's saying. Sometimes it's nice just to be able to see that. But I don't see, for me, that was more important to be able to cross-reference. As it related as well, though, to the punishment, which is up on 9.6, section C, there is no punishment. So I thought that was interesting. I assume maybe then we're talking about contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
Yeah.
And
It's-
so.
It's punishment under 172. That's the general penalty provision.
Right, and that's fine, and so I figured all the two before said, it shall be punished as set forth in section 1-172, or 1-72. Figured if C was the same, it would say, shall be punished as set forth in section 1.72. I figure it's,
I think you're reading it wrong, but we can talk about it later.
okay.
Because A and B are,
Oh, you're saying that assumes C
no,
within it?
I'm saying A and B say unless otherwise specified, so they have a first offense, a second offense, and then a third goes to the general penalty, which is contained code, section 172, and C does not have a specified penalty, it's just the general penalty.
I'm just telling you, I would never have gotten that. I'm a lawyer trained to do this reading too, and
That's why I wanted the language changed in that
I would
paragraph.
never have gotten that, John. So I appreciate that, but I was like, whoa, where's the penalty? And, you know, okay. So that was a concern. And I'm sorry, going back to the special event thing right underneath it, like I said, I know you have it defined, but my question was, T-shirts with a pot leaf on it, you're telling me that, you know, that's not okay? You know, some other name of a club with a picture of a product on it of some sort, that seems to be unlawful and punishable. And I think that's overly broad. I don't know that you intended to have that be the interpretation of that. So that was a concern.
So you're saying a T-shirt is display of marijuana?
If it has a big fat leaf, what do you call it?
I call it a T-shirt, and it's not the product.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I mean, I'm just telling you, I didn't know what
Okay,
it meant.
we can clarify it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying an actual display, you know, like, because displaying marijuana can take many forms. Pictures, high times pictures or displays of marijuana in my book, but maybe not. I didn't know what was intended. You know, as it related to what Alyssa was saying, and I appreciate the sign issue that you guys are having. I think that complying with code is a great way to do it. Maybe something like complying with the code with the intent of minimizing significant visual impact and have it pass through a design review board. I don't know, I didn't reread your sign code to find out if in fact you have a design review board that passes on that. But oftentimes municipalities have that board that will sign off on the signage that does in fact minimize significant visual impact. Obviously it's subjective,
But that's why you have a board that can be replaced.
in my opinion.
Okay.
Then to the other notes that I took while you guys were talking, I think it was inherently difficult, this parallel perpendicular
Yeah.
thing. I thought that was very confusing. Just as John described, you turn, you know, the windy road is windy. And depending on your viewpoint would depending on where that parallel or perpendicular would be. Alyssa, local licensing is a term of art. So when you said local town licensing, the reason why it's generally kept as local licensing is because that's generally the term.
No, but it said that in there.
It says as town local licensing.
Right.
You wanted it to say local town licensing. So
No, I said maybe you should just, well, or you should take it out. Wait,
I would just simply say to you that local licensing is a term of art.
Yeah.
Don't put town in between it. The way John had it was appropriate, about town, local licensing, that kind of thing. Or make it local licensing authority. The open and public, it's supposed to be both, so, and you guys, I heard you get that, so. So I couldn't tell from here, but I guess it is a commercial zone district. It wasn't specified in this document that I read, so it must be someplace else. Oh, security plan, just so you know, for MED, you're required to submit a security plan, so it's just a document, it's already prepared. If you want to add more to that requirement of the security plan, then your group will do so. I assume you know there is something in the valley called the Marijuana Valley Council. And that would be something that, for the community engagement, I just wanted to make sure you knew that that was there. On page 7, under 9.9-5, the paragraph that sounded a bit wordy, it could simply say, set forth in the, not applicable, but set forth in the code and define the code, which means the retail marijuana code. The code, the administrative regulations, this chapter, and then any other terms and conditions issued by the local licensing authority. That would be a way to shorten that. Otherwise, I have no further comments.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Lauren.
those suggestions.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
Very helpful.
Appreciate it.
Okay, other comments from the general public? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, Renee Grossman, 122 Little Elk Creek Avenue in Snowmass. After all these months of sitting here, I was actually really impressed with this. I thought this was really represented everything that had been discussed. I had two questions. One is the security plan a defined term in the Snowmass Village Municipal Code?
No.
So it's just whatever it is in the retail marijuana code?
It could be as part of an application, it'll be specified what elements are required.
Okay. Just because it was capitalized, so that's why. And then the community engagement plan, is that specifically defined in the municipal code, or is that just defined as is in this paragraph?
As is in this paragraph, but it could be part of the application process as well.
Okay.
The application materials could specify what elements are necessary.
Okay. And then my only comment on 9.6D, the first thing I would say is if you say display of retail marijuana or retail marijuana product as defined in the retail marijuana code, that should correct or eliminate any confusion about what's allowed. The one thing that we had discussed or had been discussed here, was whether or not to allow marijuana paraphernalia to be visible from the outside. And I don't recall where you guys came out on that.
I think we know.
There was no.
Yeah, I think we said no.
Yeah, there was no on paraphernalia.
So it seems like that might be the place to add that.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Renee,
Thanks,
thank
Renee.
you
Thank
for-
you, Renee.
Okay, any other comments? Public comments? Okay,
Madam Mayor.
yeah, come on up, Matt.
I was going to start this by saying good afternoon, but now I have to say good evening. My name is Matt Dubé, Snowmass Village. Okay, so one comment, section 9.6, line 355. So We're there, okay. Operation of any public or private club or business allowing the consumption of marijuana on the premises. I think that's overly narrow, and I think that creates loopholes that can be exploited in ways that the council did not intend. It doesn't address things such as tour buses that have consumption while on the bus on public streets. Doesn't address, for example, something like organizations that are not businesses or not clubs, such as a nonprofit or an association. So I think some work needs to be done there to tighten those loopholes. Maybe the organizations are defined by corporate structure, whether it's, you know, any registered corporation, LLC, you know, something like that, so that it's more clear for everyone to understand and delivers the kind of intent that you want to see happen in this language.
Okay, good catch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, any other public comments or suggestions?
Matt, one question for Matt.
Okay.
Matt, your example of a tour bus, I don't think I understand it, because a tour bus would be a business, or it would be a private coach. So would that seems to fit. So can you explain that, or maybe give me a different example?
Denver is dealing with this very issue right now. For a time, tour buses were operating. They were, I guess, hosting guests going from retail store to store, and in between consuming while on the bus. Police department decided to enforce the law that was for the city of Denver, pulled over buses and basically stopped the activity. So charges were filed and fines were levied. So some municipalities are seeing this as public use and not private use. It does seem to fall into that.
The idea that Lauren suggested about a board. But that was just me.
Well,
What?
I can give you a little history on the reason
if
that
you
it's set
could.
up that way. Is you'll all remember that we had trouble getting our local licensing authority for liquor populated.
Well, this is a more exciting topic.
Okay. We'll ignore the history then, and we
No,
can do
I'm
that.
just kidding.
You know, I was just going by the way we restructured the local licensing authority just a few years ago. And the amendment that says it will be regulated like alcohol. Now, Lauren brings up a good point. It is, it hasn't happened yet in the liquor licensing realm, but it would be up to the judge, if he is conflicted, to declare that conflict, and we would have to hire another hearing officer. But it's a valid point. It's just the way we did it. We had a liquor licensing authority board for many, many years, and it became such a routine with liquor, and maybe because this is not, there should be a board. I'm just telling you the reason why it is the way it is in this ordinance.
I'd like to propose that perhaps we consider a board, and just as we dissolved the liquor licensing board as we had problems getting members, I think this would be one that people would be excited to participate in.
Well, I guess my feeling about this off the top is that since we've created this ordinance and the restrictions and the requirements of the ordinance to have a limited number of marijuana shops, that after the initial licensing determination, and and perhaps a flurry of application, but after the initial determination, on an annual renewal, there's gonna be very little to do, because there aren't gonna be a lot of shops. And so,
I see where you're going with that.
well, I think the board will end up being the same problem that,
Board of Appeals.
that the Board of Appeals and the Liquor Board had.
You know, you raise a real valid point. I'm thinking Aspen with 9 or 8 or
Yeah,
whatever.
they got a lot of action. We're not gonna have a lot of action.
Well, then maybe you just have a separate hearing officer.
You have another public comment from
Oh,
someone.
yeah, come on up. Your name?
Good evening, Council. Green Joint, 1030 Grand Avenue, Glenwood. It's been a couple of years. I've been
Yeah,
in
since
most of
you've
your
been up here.
sessions. Dan Sullivan,
Green Joint.
your Green Joint, 1030 Grand Avenue. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
There's actually a hybrid of, it can be done as well. First of all, sitting council can also be the local licensing authority. So on the initial group come in, you guys can be the ones that say yay, nay. The administrative piece, to Bob's point, is checking the boxes. Have you got any felonies? Do you still stand up to muster? Are you still worthy? This is a privileged license, and that, quite frankly, can be handled in most part by the city clerk in many areas as well, once all the and then the city manager signs off on that. So it doesn't have to be another board of 5 people that in fact do it. You're right, we're talking between 2, 3, 4 licensees maximum, I'm guessing, that will come to the town. So just another task, that at least initial piece, to have the council be licensing authority.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What way do you all want to go on this issue?
I'd like to move forward with, go into the second reading, and we could work things out.
Where are you
Not
with
even
this issue, though? Is it the
I-
judge or a board or?
I agree with Bob. I think a board's gonna wind up being useless after one year, because we have limited amount of space for X amount of.
How would you all feel? How would you all feel if the council was the licensing authority on the initial licenses, and that the municipal judge be the licensing authority on renewals?
I think.
It doesn't
Deal
really
with the conflict.
address, it doesn't fix, Lauren, your point.
The conflict.
Okay, it doesn't really fix the conflict of interest. But, I don't know, I don't think a board frankly is the way to go.
I think because we are bringing this topic forward, I think we should be responsible for licensing. I think the same thing will happen with the liquor board. I think eventually it would go away. But we're sitting here, we're saying we're gonna bring this forward. Let's be responsible for who's going to be providing the product in our town.
I mean, I guess I could live with that too.
Is there a drawback, John?
Not really. You'll tell me about it, and we'll probably have a little pool on the date that you tell me about it, but
Lauren, come up to the mic, please.
Lauren Mayton. I was just suggesting that I think it's a great idea. You guys want to have the control over all the applications. You want to know who's coming into your town. So on all applications that are at least initial applications or aren't new owner renewals, because that's when you're having a new player enter the game, is when there's new owners. If it's the same person, if it's the same group, nothing's changed, same group, it's going to become redundant. Yes, there is no reason, but again, the conflict would still be the issue. So no reason why the clerk couldn't, if there's no changes, if there's no modification of premises, there's no sign changes, there's nothing major that you guys want to deal with, then the clerk can sign off on it and it's done. Or you can take a look at it and go, hey, there looks like no changes, let's send it to the clerk, or something to that effect. So,
Since we're just getting started, if you will, it may be wise that we take the lead and
But there will be changes of ownership.
Yeah, there will be.
There will
There'll
be changes of ownership, there will be mergers, there will be acquisitions.
And there'll
It
be a
will
change in
happen.
council members, so there you go.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you want to put that in? You want to,
I
okay.
can do that.
Okay, and the language or some of the recommendations that Alyssa provided, thank you very much for your wonderful skills in editing again. If you want to give those to John, I will ask if I have a motion for approval for this ordinance on first reading, and it's, let me go back over there, it's ordinance number 3, series of 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, all in support?
Aye.
Oppose? I'm really conflicted personally, but I'll vote with my colleagues.
Thank you, Markey.
Alyssa?
I mean, I feel the same way, but we're like at a dead end, so there's nothing we can do.
Thank you, Alyssa.
And your vote is?
So that's an aye or a nay?
What?
It's not a dead end, it's a new beginning.
Yes or no?
No, I already said, I
Should go
already
with
voted
cancel.
for it.
Oh, you did?
But
We
then
didn't- we couldn't hear you,
Marky
I'm sorry.
asked me to clarify. So I'll
So it's
just throw it
5-0.
out there.
Yeah, I'm really conflicted because I don't think it's right for our town, but we are where we are, and we just need to move on. So,
Those changes, bring it back to you in 2 weeks,
okay. Okay.
18th.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
Thank you, public, for
Thanks, everybody.
A lot of
coming
people,
and for your
and Lauren,
comments.
thank you for all your comments.
Thank you for waiting and your patience. Thank you.
We'll be smoking pot and smoking cigarettes.
Everything I wanted to deal with.
If you're 21.
Okay, well, next item on the agenda is town council reports and actions.
No.
Oops.
The resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry, resolution.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I'm just going to speak from my desk, but it's Resolution 22, and it is approving the last open seats we had on our volunteer boards and commissions. We found, we have 2 people that applied for the Part-Time Residence Advisory Board that fit in the at-large and condo. And we also had Tammy Barr for the Citizen Grant Review Board that fits in, and those applications are included, and we'd like to get them appointed and have our boards all full.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval of resolution number 22? Or
Can I
do-
just ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry, the writing is so small. The guy, Charles Hess, that applied for the, Part-Time Residence Advisory Board.
At large?
In his application, he says, "I would like to participate in the development of the town's future direction, culture, and key issues as they arise." I don't know. I just wanted to make sure he understood what the Part-Time Residence Advisory Board was really doing. Because it's really not participating in the development of Snowmass. It was just a curiosity
They
question.
like to have having attended many of these now for quite a while, and Travis is the liaison. They do like to discuss town issues and town direction and give input.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll clarify with them, Alyssa.
It's fine, I just
In
saw
a very
that and,
politically correct way.
okay.
Okay, so do I have a motion for approval of resolution?
So be it.
Oh,
Resolution number 22, series of 2019.
Thank you very much, Tom. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in support?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Okay, moving on to reports. Tom, I'm going to start with you tonight.
Okay, I'm in. Core had a retreat, and I actually was out of town, and I'm waiting for the Mona's out of town at the moment, waiting for the minutes, but they are working on the 25th anniversary, and more things are coming out, and I should have more information next week.
Okay. ROAPA has scheduled a retreat for a week from Thursday, and we've been, I actually had a meeting with April Long last week to kind of talk about some of my thoughts on what the organization should be looking at going forward. But I will be back to you after that with the results of that meeting. And I also want to bring out to the attention of the community that the New York Times in this Sunday's travel section had a very nice article on Snowmass with lots of pictures.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thank you, Rose,
Very
for
nice.
sending it out.
Thank you, Rose, for getting that
Yeah.
done. Yep. That's all I have.
Headline, Snowmass Sun, should be. Snowmass appears in the New York Times.
Yeah.
Listen to that one, Erica. Okay. I think that, well, I know that all of you are aware of a task force that was organized by the Aspen Institute on mobility, primarily around the entrance to Aspen.
That was a few years ago.
It was met for about 18 months. So last Friday, or the 22nd, week ago, I guess it was a week ago Friday, they reconvened, and the purpose was to provide all of the candidates running for Aspen City Council an update of what was accomplished and with that task force, and trying to elicit support for ongoing work with this transportation group at the Aspen Institute. So every one of the candidates commented. Several members of the sitting council had to leave because it was not a noticed meeting. One of the suggestions from the chairpersons, one of the 4 chairpersons, was to return to EOTC to look for consulting dollars to spend more time and money on this entrance to Aspen and transportation issues. And I was asked if I would support that, and I will tell you that I stayed mum and non-committal on behalf of all of us. We would listen, but we'd be non-committal at this time. Furthermore, we're talking about mobility in the Roaring Fork area. My recommendation is we do nothing with EOTC until we make this a Roaring Fork issue, because a lot of this, everybody, all the candidates were talking about, it's all the worker bees coming in, causing all the traffic issues. So why do we not have those jurisdictions involved? So really, to me, it's a Rafty issue, and a Dave Pezinchek should take some leads here, and perhaps not this group.
And I had a funeral that night.
Yes.
So, but I mean, I think your observation is right. It's a political issue. And if you remember the last time we did this as an EOTC, we got to a goal line, and a political decision was made by the city of Aspen, which is certainly within their purview. But until that political issue is dealt with, the technical part doesn't really matter.
Yep, that's right.
So anyway, that was my report. I received a summary of that meeting today, and I'll send it out. I haven't looked at it yet.
Nordic Council's doing some preliminary review of potentially taking over the grooming operations up at Ashcroft.
Oh, really?
So we could, very early on, but that's potential. They're just looking at alternatives for early and later season skiing. So the top of Aspen Mountain is also being explored for their development plan. So we'll see where those go. And also, I got a couple calls and people who are chefs that are really interested in Kerbaloonik.
Oh.
And I directed them to Danny and Gina to ask some questions and figure out if they could help them out or get involved. And there's been no response. So, and these are pretty renowned chefs. So I put it out there to you guys to say, how do we encourage them to follow through on their lease What are your thoughts?
In fact, I was going to move into executive session for that purpose.
Okay.
But John didn't provide me the language to move into an executive session. So, huh?
If you're
Well,
talking, are we doing it now?
I can give an update while we're waiting for him.
I can too.
Oh, no, I meant an update
Oh,
about
I'm sorry,
my
let's
stuff.
do the update, no, I'm sorry.
I didn't mean about that. I just meant about my stuff. Well, it has to do with Nordic. So I've been noticing that when the town lots fill up and they put the overflow people in the Black Saddle. So on Saturday, I went to go use, the dog trail.
The Labrador,
And all of those spots for Nordic were filled by skiers for the mountain. And I inquired when I was working the other day about it, and they're like, well, they just fill them when there's nowhere else to put people. But I feel like if those spots, they have signs that they're for Nordic and use of those trails, that they need to remain open for those trails because,
Was that Saturday you're talking about?
yes,
Well, there was a Nordic event Saturday.
no, that was Sunday.
Oh,
Nordic
okay.
event.
So did I.
But I just think it's not
Okay.
a great thing when you're a Nordic
Right.
person coming to use those trails and they're unavailable because they're used by skiers. And I physically saw the mountain skiers taking off their, so I don't know what kind of agreement is with the Black Saddle lot and if those spots really do need to remain open for the Nordic trails, but I don't think it's really fair to someone that's coming to do Nordic and there's nowhere to park because they've been taken up by skiers for the mountains. So I don't know who to address that with or how to deal with that, but I think it's a problem, and I think that we need to, given that we've had good snow and that people are coming and the mountain's busy, which is a great thing, but there's a lot of people who want to use those trails for,
You're very
for
correct.
those purposes. Likewise, on Sunday, there was that Nordic event, but it would be really nice if there was some sort of, I don't know if it comes out on Pick and Alert or whatever it is that says that you can't be on those trails. Because when you went to go walk the dog, if you didn't know that was going on, they're screaming at you. And it's not right. There was no notification that I saw about it. And I feel like, how are you supposed to know?
Well, you weren't supposed to be on the Labrador Trail?
Right. I wasn't walking the dog. My sister-in-laws were walking the dog. And they got yelled at by the Nordic people saying they had to be off the trail. And I just stopped.
But we probably run into the same thing with the rec center, don't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do. Yeah,
I'm
and it
just
works at
saying-
more or less works at the rest center,
Yeah.
more or less.
My point was, I don't know what the agreement is. I don't know if there's any specific agreement. But the bottom line is that those spots are not being used by Nordic people.
Okay.
I think the agreement which John sent to me when I forwarded on to you guys.
I just don't, I don't
I
remember.
don't think it includes parking though, does it? It's just the trail system.
I'm gonna
I'll have to go back
I
and
don't
look.
know, I have to go look at it.
You have anything else?
I don't think it has anything to do,
And I'm just wondering where the blue light
I
is,
mean, in the PUD, right?
the blue tree.
Oh, it's gone,
Blue tree's taken down.
Why?
because the holiday season's over.
Well, was it this weekend?
No, it's been off for weeks.
I know this weekend we had lighting issues down there, and I know, I don't know the answer to the blue tree, if you're asking if it's up or down. As part of our holiday lights, I know we haven't taken the holiday lights down, whether it's lit or not, I couldn't tell you. But broader, I know we had an issue down there this weekend with some, getting that whole intersection lit up. Something happened, I couldn't tell you what it was.
Okay.
Since our last meeting, the first meeting for the airport visionary group was held. I'm on the community character subcommittee, and this is going to take all year to work through, to try to resolve and to try to get consensus on what the community would like the airport to be. And it includes everything from runways to terminals to size of planes to numbers of people. And I would like to encourage the Snowmass Village community to contact me with their thoughts throughout this entire process on what their vision of the airport would be as it relates to our community character. And for those of you who don't know, my email address is bcircus@tosv.com. I've also posted this on my Facebook page, and I sincerely want your input, because the more people who provide input into this, the better the decision that we will get to at the end of the year. So that's that.
Okay, all, please pay attention here. Thank you very much for agreeing to join.
Yep,
this,
you're welcome.
This task force. I think you're a great choice from our community. Okay. Town Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to CRS 24-64024 and Snowmass Village Municipal Code 245C to specifically discuss one item, conferences with an attorney for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-64024C and Snowmass Village Municipal Code 245C2. Provided there is an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the quorum present at this meeting to hold an executive session, and for the sole purpose of considering items A and B above. Provided further that no adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, regulation, or formal action shall occur at this executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go into executive session.
Thank you, Alyssa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We will be going into executive session. And
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
I have to make sure there's a 2/3 majority.
Can I just say I want to go home?